35 years ago, a summer blockbuster gave us a nightmare in liquid metal, a machine that could become anyone and survive almost anything. But standing in its way, Sarah Connor, her son John, and a robot bodyguard with a killer one-liner.
Hasta la vista, baby.
I'm Jared Bowen. For our next watch party, we're revisiting Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Watch with us and call in to tell us how this blockbuster resonates now. That's on The Culture Show next Wednesday at 2 on GBH 89.7.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on BPR and GBH and NEPM. The number of Amazon workers relying on taxpayer-funded food stamps and Medicaid nearly tripled since the pandemic. How is it that the workers of Trump-supporting billionaire Jeff Bezos can't meet their basic needs on their salaries so that we have to subsidize their income? Then we'll talk with Minnesota's Hennepin County Attorney Mary Arty, plus former Secretary of Public Safety Andrea Cabral on the murder trial of Lindsay Clancy.
I'm Marjorie Egan. In the second hour, it's environmentalist Bill McKibben on this summer's global heat waves, the fires from Canada, and how to keep up the fight on climate. Finally, it's Am I the A-hole Day? This week's issue, a mechanic neighbor fixes the guy next door's car for free. But then he complains about how long it takes the mechanic to fix it. Can beggars be choosers when it comes to free labor? Call or text next on Boston Public Radio.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Kristen Wright. Oil prices are surging, with the international benchmark Brent crude jumping above $100 a barrel for the first time since May. Attacks on oil tankers in the Red Sea are among the latest strikes in the escalating war with Iran. NPR's Jane Arraf reports Iran attacked American bases in Jordan and Kuwait overnight as the U.S. conducted a 12th night of strikes.
Iran attacked air defenses and other targets on U.S. military installations in Jordan early Thursday. Commercial satellite images showed what appeared to be an aircraft hangar burning at a base in southern Jordan. The Jordanian military said the country's air force shot down 4 missiles and 6 Iranian drones targeting the kingdom. In Kuwait, Iran said it attacked U.S. military equipment, including a Patriot missile defense system. Iran, in announcing the attacks, has appealed to the people of Jordan and Kuwait to support the strikes on U.S. military targets in their countries, saying U.S. forces were violating their sovereignty. Jane Arraf, NPR News, Amman.
AAA says the average price for a gallon of regular gas in the U.S. is over $4. The European Union has slapped Google with a $1 billion fine for favoring its own services and search results while restricting competitors. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley reports.
The fine is part of Brussels' ongoing efforts to regulate big tech companies. It caps an investigation launched in March 2024 under the EU's Digital Markets Act, which attempts to make digital markets fairer and more contestable. They claim Google set up their search engine and Google Play to favor its own services over their competitors. The European Commission says it is acting to protect consumer interests. Google says the fine harms European businesses and consumers. The fine comes at a time of high trade tensions between the EU and U.S. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Paris.
The New York Times is trying to convince a federal judge to quash Justice Department subpoenas, compelling several reporters to testify before a grand jury. NPR's David Folkenflik reports the Times says the administration is seeking its sources from a story on security concerns over the new Air Force One given to President Trump by the Qatari government.
This clash erupted after the Times reported that the U.S. Secret Service interceded to convince Trump not to take the new jet home from the NATO summit in Turkey earlier this month. The Times alleges the Trump administration is attempting to intimidate its reporters, seeking phone records not just of its journalists, but of some of their family members. Trump has sued the Times for defamation, while the paper has sued the administration to block new restrictions on covering the Pentagon. U.S. Attorney Jake Clayton says he has followed Justice Department policies and that he respects the independence of the press. David Folkenflik, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR News in Washington.
Good morning with the latest from the GBH newsroom in Boston. I'm Craig Lamolt. Massachusetts could soon have some of the least restrictive abortion laws in the country. If a woman is in the third trimester of her pregnancy, right now there needs to be a serious threat to her health or the fetus's health to legally get an abortion. But the Massachusetts House voted Wednesday to scrap those gestational limits altogether and leave it to the doctor's judgment. Dr. Anna Whalen is an OBGYN who supports the legislation and says the law as it stands now leaves healthcare workers like her in a gray area.
Everyone's version of what is, life-threatening or grave fetal issue or maternal issue varies. It shouldn't be decided by anyone other than the patient themselves with the support from their provider. To become law, the bill would still need approval in the state Senate and from Governor Healey. The Red Sox historic 15-win win streak came to an end the same day the team reached the feat. The Sox lost 5-1 in the second of yesterday's doubleheader against the Baltimore Orioles. Interim manager Chad Tracy says he's proud of the team.
It's like if that's who we are as a team and we keep doing that, we're going to win games. We're going to have a chance to win on a nightly basis. So I think not only did we run off 15 wins, but we found who we are when we're a good baseball team and what we do.
The Sox have the day off before hosting the Toronto Blue Jays tomorrow. Beautiful summer forecast for the next several days. Sunny today with a high in the low 80s. Clear tonight or low around 60. Friday, sunny with a high in the low to mid 80s. And it looks like a nice weekend, sunny and in the 80s on Saturday and Sunday. Looks like the same thing on Monday. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Cy Sims Foundation. Since 1985, supporting advances in science, education, and the arts towards a fairer, more just, and civil society. More information is available at cysimsfoundation.org.
Brady. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. Meredith Goldstein, love letters columnist, relationship columnist for the Boston Globe. We're going to have a great live music performance. And July 29th, 11 to noon, Governor Maura Healey will be with us at the Boston Public Library. August 11th, the Attorney General will be there. Good morning, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
So in recent years, Amazon and Walmart have paid their workers so poorly that large numbers have been reliant on food stamps and Medicaid paid for by us, by the taxpayers. In fact, at Amazon, since 2020, the share of its workers who are reliant upon these federal benefits has actually tripled. This is according to new government data that was requested by Senator Bernie Sanders. Now, Trump-supporting CEO Jeff Bezos is worth about $250 billion, yet he apparently can't afford to provide his workers with salaries and health care required to keep them off federal aid. Obviously, he can, but he chooses to have us subsidize his workers' pay instead. Meanwhile, over at the world's biggest retailer, Walmart, in addition to us subsidizing many of their workers, their CEO, Doug McMillon, went on to kiss the president's ring in Mar-a-Lago before the second inauguration. And in the years since, Walmart has rolled back its DEI initiatives, no longer giving priority treatment to suppliers owned by women and minorities. So the lines are open at 877-301-8970. Why do we allow these people and these companies to get away with such lousy treatment of not just their workers, but of us? Because essentially they are having us subsidize the pay and benefits of their workers. So where are you on all this? What's your reaction to this information? And are you going to do anything with the information? The number is 877-301-8970. This is one of these things where, because everything is so shocking every day, it's sort of, oh my God, this is horrible. Let's say it again. The share of workers at Amazon who are dependent upon food stamps and Medicaid has tripled since 2020, which means Jeff Bezos is paying his workers and we are paying his workers.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, when you think if you are a person who is just squeaking by, or you're a middle-class person who's trying to save for your kids' college education or whatever, there is something feels a little off about you having to pay taxes to support Jeff Bezos' employees. It's kind of crazy, but this is this is where we are with unregulated capitalism. I mean, we always talk about capitalism as the best system and all that. Well, it kind of needs to be regulated. And ever since Reagan, things have kind of gone off the rails, and no one seems interested in
By the way,
fixing it. Which is why, of course, you have all these democratic socialists winning places all around the country.
I think that's a very good point. By the way, it was the GAO who did this report. I can't remember. Whatever government agency did this report, they looked at 11 states to do their research.
Yeah, one of them is us.
We were one of the 11 states to be doing this, and I mean,
Rhode Island too.
We are saps of epic proportions. I mean, they're basically giving us part of the bill to pay for their workforce. We don't know what your reaction about this is and whether or not you would take any action, personal action, as a result of learning this information at 877-301-8970.
Walmart used to top the list back in 2020. Now it's the Uber, Lyft drivers, food delivery people that are topping the list of people who are working. It's not clear how many are working full-time, but many, if not most, are working full-time.
Well, I'm so glad you said that. Of all the companies that are listed here, and there are many, Dollar Tree is on the list,
Target.
the gig economy places are on the list, as Marjorie just said. Is Target on the list? I didn't see it.
Oh, wait a minute. That's people boycotting, not about diversity.
Okay. So it's really important that the only company willing to comment on the record. Where was the story? In the Washington Post? I can't remember. Where was it?
It was
Washington Post.
Yep.
So the only entity was Amazon. Said we have a lot of part-time workers. My reaction to that is that they probably do. But if it turns out they had hard data to suggest that almost all the people getting federal benefits paid for by us were part-time workers, they'd tell us. And if all these other companies were in the same situation, the reason we're subsidizing their workers is because they're all part-time workers, they would have responded to requests for information from the media that was doing the reporting. So I would assume until we hear from them that while they have some part-time workers, that's a smokescreen. That is not what this thing is about. It's about crappy wages, crappy benefits so that they qualify. And by the way, to qualify for these benefits, you got to make really a small amount of money, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, it's 130% of the poverty level, which is about $35,000 a year for a family of three, or that is yeah, that's right. And then for Medicaid, it's $21,000 per year for a single adult.
You know, one of our colleagues, I don't know who, just made a very good point, which hadn't occurred to me. Mm-hmm. This story is in the Washington Post. Who owns the Washington Post?
Jeff Bezos.
So while Jeff Bezos has destroyed the editorial page at the Washington Post, and he has, the reporting is still straight reporting as far as we know, including something here that puts him in a not terribly good light. 877-301-89.
Two things.
So this really makes my blood boil.
It's 35 family of three for SNAP benefits.
35,000.
35,000.
Yeah.
And the other companies where large numbers of employees receive federal benefits include McDonald's, FedEx. FedEx kind of surprised me. Dollar Tree and Dollar General, all of which have faced complaints from labor advocates that they pay wages too low to meet basic needs of their employees. I mean, you know, again, you get back to the way things have changed, where we don't seem to think it's horrible that people like Jeff Bezos make the money.
No, I think we do think it's horrible, but the answer is we don't do anything. I mean, Joel in Connecticut, who always baits me, and by the way, Joel, sadly, you're right. He writes, inspired by Jim's example, I'm boycotting Amazon, or not. It is the thought that counts. And Joel always talks about, I'm a good talker, but not a good doer. And in this case, I am right. And
Well, you know, I'm not boycotting Amazon either. You know why? Because I'm doing other things. I got a hybrid car. I'm composting. I've got my
but can I tell you something?
I'm not boycotting them because you go to the store now, and half the times people don't have anything.
That's not an excuse. Joel is right. Joel is right to bait me, and it should be baiting you too. Because the reality is, this is one of the easiest, in the grand scheme of things. Well, I'm always complaining that people aren't out on the streets every day. That takes a significant amount of time and energy. It takes a lot less energy to go to a local retailer and essentially...
Well, you know, that assumes that you're not a single mother home with three kids.
You're not a single mother home with three kids, and neither am I.
I'm not a single mother home with three kids, but I think that's a lot of the reason. People get their groceries on Amazon.
What's
they
our
forgot
excuse?
Something at the store. My excuse is that it's one of my chief joys in life, getting a package from Amazon. However, I'll challenge people what else they're doing. doing? Are they not eating meat? Are they doing all these other things that are good for?
What does that have to do with this?
Because meat is one of the biggest reasons of climate change.
I understand, but we're talking about these set of particular sins, and we are guilty. At least I'll speak for myself. Mm-hmm. Guilty as charged, and I'm going to try to be better. Spencer is listening in Tennessee.
Yep.
Fun fact: most same-day Amazon deliveries are done by gig workers with no benefits. Source: I am one of them, says Spencer.
And the other places that you're supposed to be boycotting, although Target has changed their DEI policies, they claim they have anyway. People were boycotting them. Home Depot's on that list. Walmart's on the list. Tesla, Spotify, Meta, Planeteer. There's a lot of companies.
Good. I have a Tesla. I was at Home Depot twice the other day. I order from Amazon. Kathy in Salem, I canceled my Amazon Prime membership last year. No regrets. I know that Bozo Bezos won't miss my few dollars, but I feel good about my decision, and I try to buy local when I can, which is what we frankly should all do. Let's take some calls. Charlie.
But you know something?
Yeah, one second, Charlie.
And maybe I'm making excuses for myself.
You are, and so am I.
But I'm no less than Anna Girnadas, who's a very smart person about this whole thing, writes about this income inequality stuff all the time. It's great if people want to boycott that, but if 10,000 people boycott, it's not going to matter. We're going to have politicians change the way things are regulated. And so it's very nice. We can all feel better about it, but it's not what's going to make the change.
Well, I think that is a weak excuse, I have to say.
Okay.
I do. And by the way, again, I'm looking in the mirror. I am Joel in Connecticut is right. As to me, you can come up with whatever response you want. Charlie in Glastonbury, Connecticut, welcome to the show. Hi, Charlie.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Of course.
I would just like to recommend to the listeners and perhaps to you folks, if you haven't read it already, a book by Clara Matee called Escape from Capitalism and Intervention.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the leading economic books of 2022. This book lays out in very concrete economic terms the alliance between politics and what you're talking about and capitalistic societies, which are capital accumulation. And so what's happening is not a surprise. And it's also, to your point, hand in glove with the people who are running the political machines of Democrats and Republicans.
Well, I agree with all that. And let me just, but the last thing you said, which caused me to remember something I should have looked up during the show, and maybe one of you guys in the control room can check this. Bernie Sanders, who requested this information from, I think it's the GAO, I'm not sure.
I think he's
it is. It's Government Accountability Office.
The most popular politician in America.
He is, I believe.
And what is he? Democratic Socialist.
But the point I was trying to make, Charlie, about when you said Democrats and Republicans, there are at least some Democrats, and I'm not sure if Sanders is one of them, he probably is, who have proposed in the past that whatever amount of money the federal government spends to subsidize the wages and benefits of workers at these huge companies like Amazon and Walmart should be added to their tax bill. So there would be so essentially if they get, I'm making up a number, $1 billion, the workers get $1 billion of food stamps and Medicaid, their tax bill would go up $1 billion. So essentially it would net out and the taxpayers get their money back. Charlie, a fine call and thanks for the book recommendation. We appreciate it. 877-301-8097. Here are a lot of principled people. Debbie from Bourne. I've not used Amazon since January 1. I have to work a little harder to find some things, but in the end, I realize there's a lot I can live without. I'm not making impulse purchases as far as Walmart's concerned. Sometimes it's hard to find something, but I follow someone on Instagram who's a proponent of knowing what companies support Trump and not buying these products. Gail from Dudley. I stopped ordering from Amazon. I'll not support them so he can get richer while everybody else, parentheses, us,
and
gets
that is great, and that's wonderful. But I think people that are in difficult situations, again, millions of women live in high-rise apartments with small children, and it has made their life
Fine, we give them a pass. We give them a pass.
Okay, give them a pass. There are
Upper middle class people like us should not get a pass.
And there are other people that live very far from stores, and maybe they should get a pass. Jeff Bezos has run, you can hate him all you want, but he's run a brilliant company and has made people's lives phenomenally easier, and that's why they do it.
Beaver in Forge Village, welcome to the show. Hi.
Good morning, guys.
Hi.
I just wanted to comment on this. I have been a manager / supervisor in many food manufacturing plants throughout New England, and so many employees have to be on food stamps and state-paid health care because the pay rate is just terribly low. They just can't do it.
Well, there are companies and there are companies, Bieber. What you say is true. But as we were discussing we have to let you go only because the connection's horrible. My apologies. A huge percentage, I haven't looked it up, I'm going to do it in a second, of people on Medicaid, as Michael Curry said to us yesterday, are workers. If you're working in a small company, small business that is just eking by, that's one thing. If you were the head of one of the wealthiest, largest companies, Walmart, the largest private employer in the United States, maybe the world, I'm not sure, Amazon, second largest private employer, there's no excuse. There's absolutely no excuse for relying upon taxpayer funding of benefits and things for your workers. Just isn't.
You know, it was amazing, too, how they were like the big stars of the Met Gala. He and his wife, they showed up in all their regalia at the Met Gala.
Who, Bezos?
Yeah, Bezos and his wife. And then, of course, they had that very lavish wedding over in Italy that lasted for days that all the glitterati went to.
By the way, let me just say this number. This gets back to, again, what Michael Curry said to us yesterday from the NAACP convention. 64% of non-elderly, non-disabled adults on Medicaid are working. And again, they're places, smaller employers. I don't think most of us would begrudge, maybe you would, some taxpayer support for those workers and indirectly for those businesses, but it's the big boys we're talking about, again, Walmarts, Amazons, etc.
I mean, the big thing, again, this is the way the United States of America runs now. We have a massive inequality. It's been growing since the 1980s. Poor people are getting screwed. The middle class is getting screwed. People can't afford healthcare. They can't afford anything. And until people who run the government start looking at this, I mean, the Democrats that are floundering around, they're wondering why people like Mondani get elected in New York City, because nobody can afford to live there, and he's offering them a different kind of way of life, and he's giving child care. Why don't we have child care in the United States of America? I mean, think of the burden that people could go shopping, Jim, when their kids are at
I can
daycare.
answer that question, Rod. The reason we can't afford child care is because we have no money because we're funding benefits for workers at Amazon and Walmart. By the way, you mentioned people, woman with 3 kids living on the 10th floor. Here's another one, anonymous. I'm disabled and live in a rural area of Massachusetts. Amazon is a lifeline for me. We're not talking about you or that. We're talking about people who, like us, who could survive without an Amazon or a Walmart or whatever. Beth in Belmont. Hi.
Hi. I'm just wondering, I think somebody else directed this to, that your tax rate as a big business like Walmart and Amazon should be based on how many full-time employees you have and how much benefit. If you have mostly full-time employees offering great benefits, you have a low tax rate. If you have a high percentage of part-time employees and low benefits, then you should pay more in taxes. Same idea of covering the cost. And also, Target, I've been boycotting Target, as a lot of people have. And Target is doing everything it can to try to get people back in.
Like
So
what? Like what,
boycotting-
Beth? Tell us what they're like. What?
They're redesigning stores. They're advertising more. They're enhancing their products. They're giving free giveaways on TV, on talk shows.
Have they reversed, by the
I
way?
don't-
I mean, that we know that they were taking some LGBTQ themed things during Pride Month, I believe, off the shelves. Marjorie was suggesting, and I think she's right, that they at least said they reversed the policy.
Yeah,
Do you know if they did?
They supposedly claim that they reaffirmed the commitments to diversity initiatives and community investment, but people are suspicious. and
Remember
I
that
don't-
preacher from Georgia was
Yeah,
leading a
'cause I
boycott and
stopped-
doing
I stopped
really
using
well.
the-
I'm sorry, what?
I-
Go ahead.
I stopped using them when they gave away DEI because I feel like they should be, employees should reflect the people that go there.
Beth, I hope someday I'm like you. I hope that someday comes soon. Thanks for your call, and I really admire what you're doing. 877-301-8970. Art in West Bridgewater says, I don't use Amazon. Nobody used it not that long ago. Remember those days? People are just lazy, and Amazon makes it possible. That is a stunningly
Well, it's true.
accurate.
It does mean you don't ever have to leave your house. What is amazing to me is how many people use everything else.
What do you mean everything else?
The home delivery stuff that goes down from restaurants and from CVS and from like places like McDonald's and from places like, what's that kind of chic little bakery bakery that everybody loves, Tate, places like that. And people, young
I'm
people.
a flour guy myself, so I wouldn't know.
Young people get all sorts of stuff delivered. How many people get takeout delivered to their house now?
I haven't done that calculation, I should say. You're not. That sounds like, since you brought that up, I assume you don't do that. Is that correct?
Well,
you're not patronizing those services, by the way, which are also on the list, as you said before, of the largest share of employees or contract workers who the taxpayers are supporting.
People.
Right, yeah.
Ride sharing, the Uber, Lyft people, the food delivery sort of people are the ones that are really screwed in terms of making any money.
You know, again, while we're talking about the workers being screwed, I want to reiterate what we've said about a dozen times. It's not just the workers are being screwed, the taxpayers are being screwed. I repeat, this GAO study confirms, let's just look at Amazon, the share of Amazon workers who are dependent upon Medicaid and food stamps to get by has gone up 5 times since 2020. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Davida, you're in Vermont. Welcome to the show. Hi. Davida.
I'm here.
Hi.
I'm here.
Say something.
Hey.
Welcome. Hello. How you doing?
Saying a lot. I'm doing okay.
Great.
So I was going to start out by saying that every time you talk about Amazon, I just go crazy. So I'm not going to address that because I agree there's 1,000 things people could do, and everyone who's listening to your show should not shop there or Whole Foods. But what I did want to say is that I think the other issue is there's so many food deserts. And there's so many communities that don't have resources because of the issue around business and where they choose to go. So communities that maybe rely on it, or rural communities not having a grocery store within a certain distance and only having a Family Dollar store or something like that, which is, there's lots of research on towns that are of a certain socioeconomic level have $3 and $4 stores within a certain radius. And I think also lots of local grocery stores do delivery, and pharmacies do delivery. So that's just all I wanted to say. It's something to consider.
Yeah, and I think a lot of elderly people too. I mean, it's a incredible business, and if I were a better person, I suppose I'd resign from it too, Jim. But it's one of the things I do.
877-301. Davida, thanks for the call. 301-8970. Where are we going next? We'll find out in about a second.
Here's somebody that boycotted Amazon back when bookstores got closing over 20 years ago. There's a piece in the Globe today, though, about more and more bookstores showing up around the city of Boston.
Well, it's been happening actually for a bit of time. Well, because bookstores are a great third place, by the way.
They're a great third place. And I remember when Barnes & Nobles came into Harvard Street in Brookline, everybody thought Brookline Booksmith was going to go under. In fact, Brookline Booksmith survived and is thriving still, and Barnes & Nobles shut down. We can fit in one more call real quick. Is it Katri from Hartford?
Hi.
Hi, Katri from Pittsburgh.
Oh. Well, we got both wrong.
Sorry.
Hi, Katri. How are you?
Okay.
What's up?
So, do I need to turn the sound on again?
Well, you're having an echo. You should turn the radio down, but if you have an echo, that's the nature of the beast, and you have 45 seconds.
Okay, so I'm calling because Jim, don't try to do it.
We can't.
Katri, we have a horrible connection.
We can't hear you. I'm very sorry. It's a bad connection. I'm sorry.
That is unfortunate. You should read this study, everybody. The story that we are referring to is in the Washington Post, and there's a link there where you can look at all the companies that are on the list, and it's not just Walmart and Amazon.
One of the texters makes a great point. Many businesses keep their employees just under 30 hours so they don't have to provide health insurance, and many people are working part-time but not by choice. That's another great point. Okay, we are moving on. Up next, we are going to talk with the Minnesota County Attorney who is leading the charge in seeking accountability from federal immigration agents who killed Renee Good and Alex Pretty back in January. We're going to talk to her up next. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Claire Foy, the British actor whose nuanced work has ranged from the ill-fated Anne Boleyn in Wolf Hall to her award-winning portrayal of a young Queen Elizabeth II in The Crown. On the big screen, her work spans contemporary dramas and thrillers, including First Man, Unsane, and Women Talking. She joins us to talk about her latest film, H is for Hawk, adapted from Helen Macdonald's best-selling memoir. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and the Peabody Essex Museum, Salem's destination for authentic witch city lore and witch trials history since 1799. Ticket information and more at PEM.org. And Roto-Rooter, providing plumbing, drain cleaning, and water cleanup services in North America since 1935. 24/7 emergency services available. Service information and scheduling can be found at rotorooter.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. I'm Jim Browdy. She's Marjorie Egan. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow on July 29th from 11 till noon. Governor Healy will join us at the library for an hour to answer your questions and ours. On August 11th, the Attorney General, Andrea Joy Campbell, will join us at the library for an hour to answer your questions and ours as well. Alex Preddy and Renee Good were both shot and killed by federal immigration agents in Minnesota at the start of the year. As part of Trump's Operation Metro surge, thousands of masked federal agents descended on the streets of Minneapolis. Another resident there, Julio Cesar Sosa Celis, was also shot and injured. As I'm sure you recall, in the immediate aftermath of the shootings, many in high places in the federal government responded by likening Good and Preddy to domestic terrorists. The feds refused to share evidence with local authorities in terms of any investigation. But after 6 months of pursuit, Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty has just received some of that evidence, allowing her office to pursue an investigation into these shootings. We should say, in the spirit of full disclosure, our regular guest, former federal Judge Nancy Gertner, has been consulting with the county attorney, and she joins us now. Mary Moriarty, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me to be with you.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us. So as Jim mentioned, nothing was going on. You weren't able to get information for these months and months, but that has changed. So what did you get, and how come you got it?
Great question. I think it's helpful for people to know that before this happened, before Renee Good was shot and killed, the norm here was for law enforcement, both local and federal, to work together. And in fact, when Renee Good was shot, I was talking to the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, and our state law enforcement agency, the BCA, and we had all agreed this would be a joint investigation, that we would work together just as we always had. But then that was stopped, apparently, by the administration. And it got worse and worse until the day that Alex Preddy was shot, which was on a Saturday. The BCA went down to the scene to try to do its job and process the scene, and federal agents stood with their backs to the scene and physically prevented the BCA from entering. Even after we were able to get a judicially signed search warrant, the BCA was not allowed to go into that scene. So we, as you know, have filed a federal lawsuit in Washington, D.C., asking a judge to order the federal government to give us all of the evidence in the 3 cases, Renee Good, Alex Preddy, and Julio Sosa Solis. That lawsuit is ongoing. We also have filed charges against 2 ICE agents. That was Castro, who shot Julio Sosa Solis, and also Gregory Morgan, who was involved in somewhat of a road rage incident. The conversations have also been ongoing among the local law enforcement partners here. And at some point, and I can't speak to any conversations that the U.S. Attorney's Office may have had with the administration or whether those conversations happened, but at some point we were able to come to or have discussions that lasted about 4 or 5 weeks. We have been able to get Renee Good's car. The BCA has that. We were able to get hard drives with body cam and witness interviews and interviews with the agents and other physical evidence in these cases.
Was there any evidence, Mary Moriarty, that during this 6-month period during which the feds were sharing nothing with your office, despite, as you described, what the norm had been through the years. Was there any evidence that they were pursuing any investigation into the killings of Good and Preddy or the shooting of this Sosa Solis, or no?
Well, in that 6 months, we were hearing, at least from the administration, that they were actually investigating Renee Good's widow, Becca Good.
Yeah.
It seemed to us that they had specifically said that Renee Good was some kind of a domestic terrorist, and she had weaponized her car. So we did not believe they were doing any kind of an investigation. We thought they might have been doing an investigation in the Sosa Solis case because, as you may recall, the government actually charged Julio Sosa Solis with a crime and ended up having to dismiss that crime. And that crime was alleged to have been that he assaulted Castro. They announced that they were dismissing those cases because Castro had lied. And so, one would think that they were doing an investigation, but as this was going on, we didn't know whether they were or not. And the same was true with the killing of Alex Preddy.
Before we get back, I'm sorry, were you continuing a thought that I interrupted, or? Okay.
No.
Before we get back to what happens next, now that they finally did what they should have done 6 months ago, as a resident of that community, when I was watching, I assume you saw this too, the piece that Jake Tapper did, where he interviewed one of the 5 U.S. attorneys who resigned from that office there, 1 because of the failure to prosecute, and 2, apparently because of the desire of their bosses that they do prosecute the widow and investigate Renee Good even after she died. I mean, it just defies belief. When people, in addition to experiencing the killing of their neighbors, when they heard the head of DHS, Kristi Noem at the time, refer to, I think it was Renee Good, as a domestic terrorist, when they read or heard the President of the United States on a Truth Social post was making up, like he does everything else, that Good was trying to run over the federal officer, what impact did that have on you and your, not as the county attorney, but on you and your neighbors in that community?
Well, as county attorney, those statements were unconscionable. First of all, if you intend to do a thorough, impartial investigation, as you should be doing anytime the government takes the life of a community member, certainly that gave no one any confidence that those things would happen. And certainly we all saw the video and people had opinions about that. I do live in Minneapolis, and as a member of the community and hearing my community here, there was a lot of cry about, we are under occupation by our own federal government. Yeah. Who is here to help us? We are seeing unlawful behavior on video, and nothing, we didn't ask for federal agents to be here. So there was a lot of anguish about what was happening here, what was continuing to happen here, and whether there would ever be any accountability for any of it.
And through this process, we want to talk obviously in a second about where you are and now that you've gotten the information and what status your investigation is and when you expect to come to a conclusion. Have you been in touch with the Preddy and Good families and throughout this 6-month period? And how are they weathering this absence of an investigation and now the fact that you finally have the evidence you need?
Well, while respecting their privacy, I think you can probably guess. I can't even imagine, some of the family members heard about the death of their loved one from the media, not from the federal government. Nobody ever called them and said that this had happened. And then to suddenly have the loss of your loved one, and then you've got the president of the administration making these totally unfounded claims that they were domestic terrorists and all of the statements that they made. I can't even imagine being in that position. You've lost a loved one. You don't know what happened. And for people here, everybody, because this is the law here in Minnesota, if a licensed Minnesota peace officer takes the life of a community member, there will always be a thorough and complete investigation. That investigation, by the way, at the end of whatever's going to happen, is posted publicly on the BCA website. And at the end of their investigation, they submit that to us, if it's in our county, And we make a decision about whether charges are appropriate or not. And we are completely transparent about that decision and why it was made. So that is certainly the right of every community member, the right of every person in this country to expect that from the federal government. And surely we were not getting any signs of that.
We're talking to Mary Moriarty, who's the Hennepin County attorney.
Mary Moriarty, one of the things that really surprised me, and maybe I'm naive, is that between the shootings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, you mentioned before there was the wounding of Julio Sosa Celis, a Venezuelan national. There wasn't immediately any video of that, and that's when, as you mentioned, the ICE people claimed that he was attacking. They were attacked with shovels and broomsticks, and that was the initial claim. And in fact, now later we learn that he was inside a house or an apartment, and they shot through the door with children in the door, inside that door. So it makes you think that, and we've seen these same kind of things going on in the more recent attacks and shootings by ICE. It makes you think that if there's not video, they just keep lying.
I think it emphasizes the importance of having video, the importance of having community members there. The Sosa Solis video actually came from one of our Minneapolis, what they call milestone cameras, which clearly shows Julio Sosa Solis standing in his front yard with a shovel. It was in the winter, and he tosses that aside. You can clearly see the shovel the entire time it's going on. But you look at the shooting of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, and you hear the statements coming out of the White House, and they're just, no matter what you think about what happened or the legality of it, they are just not accurate. Renee Good was clearly not trying to run over any ICE agent. Now, we have to look at that case from the perspective of the ICE agent to see what he was seeing, but you can clearly see she's trying to move away. She's turning her wheels away. So it's a lot of gaslighting, I think, and that is why video is so important. I'll also add that after Renee Good was shot and killed, and Alex Preddy as well, we realized that there was a lot of video up there that we might not be getting. So we opened up a portal and asked the public to submit any video or any other evidence that they might have, and we got over 1,000 submissions.
Not unlike, by the way, the Tsarnaev situation at the marathon not too long ago, right here in Boston, with private cameras as well. Again, we're talking to Mary Moriarty, Hennepin County in Minnesota attorney.
Mary Moriarty, you also mentioned getting body cameras of the Minnesota killings, Preddy and Good. There's been a big question now here in June and July about why more ICE agents aren't wearing body cameras. So am I to assume that there were body cameras on these officers at the times of these killings in Minnesota?
They were wearing body cameras during the interaction with Alex Preddy. And I will say, until we actually got that evidence, all we knew is what the media was sharing was that they did have it, but nobody had confirmed for us that they did or what was on it. So yes, they were wearing body cameras, and we are reviewing that body camera now.
Do you have an expectation as to when you'll reach a conclusion in these two cases, County Attorney?
Yeah, I always try to be honest with people and not set them up for, we're going to make a decision by such and such a date. What I will say is that we have been thoughtful and very deliberate about all of these situations, including the two ICE agents we've already charged. You probably know that anytime you charge a federal agent, they will make a motion to remove to federal court. That is a layer that we normally do not have to respond to, and so you have to be really prepared.
But you would remain the prosecutors even if it was removed to federal court. Is that not correct?
That is correct, and that's a very unusual situation in that even if it was removed to federal court, my team would still be the prosecutors. We do not have to convince the U.S. attorney to file charges or continue the charges. The other thing about it is that state law applies. So if there was to be a conviction in federal court, it would be under state law, which means that a president cannot pardon a state conviction.
I'm sorry. Did I interrupt you? No? Okay. You know, one of the things I learned from reading about you and also from a CNN piece that Jake Tapper did last night about what went on in Minnesota, he talked about some of, I think it was 5 members of the U.S. Attorney's Office having resigned because they were instructed and heavily pressed to investigate Good as some kind of nefarious person and her widow, Becca Good, as a nefarious person. They refused to do it. I've never heard of the victims or survivors of a crime being investigated. You know, one is passed away, she's dead, and the other one is just her widow, the mother of the 6-year-old. That's very unusual.
When have you ever heard of a president declaring somebody guilty before there's any investigation, Marjorie? But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was saying that is part of a problem here. Not only were they not doing an investigation, but they were saying things which made it clear that they had already decided what had happened. And no, I haven't seen situations where they were investigating somebody who was a victim, essentially. And I will tell you that that does raise an issue that we should all be looking out for. When the government makes accusations like that, that person has to fear that they may be prosecuted federally. It also makes it difficult for them to perhaps make a statement because anything that they could use could potentially be used against them in federal court. And it is the U.S. Attorney's Office that can say, we're giving you immunity, so talk to us anyway. But that's, you know, a hard to get kind of immunity right now. And so I think it's very damaging. I don't know. I'm hoping it's not a strategy with the federal government to try to deter victims and witnesses from cooperating in potential prosecutions by just claiming out of the blue that they are guilty of some type of crime, which clearly is not true.
Have you gotten threats because you're investigating this situation?
Me?
Yeah.
Personally? Yes. But, you know, a lot of angry rhetoric. That's kind of been true throughout my tenure. And that's just not something that I think about that often because we, you know, as a person who lives in Minneapolis, when this was happening, as I said earlier, people in this community were saying, who is here to help us? And we were already thinking about seeing the video. You saw a video of a pregnant woman being dragged by her hand. And so we realized it was in our lane here and we needed to step up.
Mary Moriarty, we really appreciate your time. We hope you'll rejoin us after your office draws conclusions here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Be well.
For being with us. We have been speaking with the
that is
county
one
attorney.
Good development in a world of horrible developments.
It is.
The right
County
people
attorney,
have the evidence.
Hennepin County, Minnesota, Mary Moriarty. We thank her again for her time. Coming up after this quick break, former Public Safety Secretary of Massachusetts, Andrea Cabral, is going to join us. We're going to talk with her about the beginning of the Lindsay Clancy murder trial. She's the woman accused of killing her 3 young children and some election snafus. Andrea Cabral is next. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Brady. This is BPR on NEPM.
There are 26 gateway cities in Massachusetts.
And in 2026, we're going to get to know them all. But we need your help. We want to cover what matters to you.
We want to hear what concerns you have,
what you're proud of, and what you want people to know about your community.
So if you're in a gateway city,
we want to hear from you.
Reach out to us at gbhnews.org/gateway cities.
26 in 26.
That's gbhnews.org/gateway cities.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Morningside Music Bridge, returning to Boston. The summer program shines a spotlight on young classical musicians from around the world, with concerts now through August 7th at New England Conservatory. mmb.international. And Newbury Court, serving Concord, Massachusetts for 30 years as a not-for-profit continuing care retirement community dedicated to older adults. More at newburycourt.org.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow. Great live music, Meredith Goldstein, some other stuff too. The governor joins us next Wednesday, I believe. Yep, Wednesday the 29th, 11 to noon. We're joined now on Zoom by Andrea Cabral, former sheriff of Suffolk County, former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety, and a BPR contributor. Hello, Andrea.
Hi, how are you?
We're good, thanks.
Hi, Andrea. So let's start with one of the saddest cases around here in a long time. Back in 2023, Lindsay Clancy strangled her 3 young children, 5, 3, and 8-month-old, in the basement of her home in Duxbury, slashed her own neck and wrists, and jumped out a second-story window in an attempt to kill herself. She's now paralyzed from the waist down. She did this while her husband, Patrick, was out getting some takeout food. Her defense lawyers are trying for an insanity defense in the murder trial, postpartum insanity defense. But these don't usually work. What do you think in this case?
You're right. These defenses are notoriously difficult to prove because the facts are so horrific. It's sort of asking a lot of jurors to overcome the horror of what is alleged and look past that to a potential defense that they may or may not fully grasp or be able to understand to balance the emotional impact of the horrific facts. I think that's why you're seeing such a focus on the juror questionnaires. They ask a series of questions in the juror questionnaire that are geared toward eliciting from the potential juror their own history, personal history with mental illness, and that of friends and family, which ordinarily would be, sort of a privileged information. But they really do need to get at the degree to which these potential jurors either have experience with mental illness that may bias them in one way or another, or feelings about mental illness or ignorance about mental illness that may have an impact on how they receive the factual information they're given and process it fairly.
I have a bunch of questions here. The first one is when during a deliberation after the testimony is all in, are jurors in a case like this told that if you reach a verdict of not guilty, by reason of insanity, that does not mean that the defendant will go free? Are they told that, or is that not permitted?
I've actually seen it happen both ways. I've seen cases like this where, despite an admonition from a judge, a defense attorney has sort of let it be known that, if you find not guilty by reason of insanity, it doesn't mean this person will be out amongst, because that's the concern. I have also heard of judges not instructing jurors that is what will happen. They certainly get instructed they're not to consider what the potential punishment might be. But I think as a practical matter, I don't think there's a single person on that jury that thinks that a not guilty by reason of insanity would mean that the person would go free and would not go to a psychiatric facility.
Okay, here's my second thing. This is another area where I have very strong opinions, but absolutely no expertise, which seems to be my calling card here. There are a bunch of states, I don't know, but 12, 15, something like this, 14 states, Marjorie says, that have a different system than we do. Our system is, the defense is not guilty by reason of insanity. In these states, it's guilty but insane. And the theory behind, which I totally support, and the theory behind this is, and you as a former prosecutor can speak to this with expertise, unlike me, is it is really hard when you've heard testimony in a case like this, where the defendant admits she killed her 3 kids, young kids. It is really hard as a juror to say, I'm going to join a group of fellow jurors and say this person is not guilty, whether it's by reason of anything. But if I'm able to say guilty of that behavior, but insane, it will satisfy my emotional needs, for lack of a better expression. So my long-winded question is, what do you think about the state being in better shape if that were the issue before that a defense could claim rather than not guilty by reason of insanity?
I completely agree with you that guilty but insane satisfies the need to acknowledge, in this case, it would be admitted culpability. I think the reason you don't have all 50 states going for something like this is because the notion of guilt is tied to the ability to form the intent to commit the crime.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're saying the person is insane, you're saying that they didn't understand the criminality of their conduct. Therefore, it is almost impossible to say guilty but insane, except if you overlook that inherent conflict and you look to whether or not the person committed the act. I think it creates a legal standard issue because as I say, by definition, insanity is the inability to understand the criminality of one's conduct or conform your conduct to the requirements of the law. So saying guilty but insane means guilty but not guilty.
Yeah, I understand.
You know what was just to throw one thing in here, John Hinckley Jr., one of these stories mentioned, people may recall, he was found not guilty by reason of insanity after he attempted to kill Ronald Reagan back in 1982, and he spent 35 years in a psychiatric hospital. So he wasn't out, and that was back in, I think, 2016, according to the story that he got out. So he's been out for 10 years.
You know what he does now? He's a folk singer. Do you know that? He literally is like a folk singer or something.
But my point is, it was a long time in a psychiatric hospital.
Well, that gets back to my first thing. I don't understand how it cannot be a mandate, if it isn't, that a jury know what the implications of their verdict are. This gets back to my first question to you. Is it required that they know that if they determine that Lindsay Clancy is not guilty by reason of insanity, that doesn't mean she just walks out the front door? And I don't know enough about the criminal justice system to know. And you say some cases they're told, some case I don't see how it's fair not to tell them what the consequences of their decision could be.
You make a good point in as much as people believe that, there certainly are people who would believe that not guilty means, you go free to sin no more kind of thing. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that jurors are usually routinely instructed to not be concerned about the punishment for a crime.
Yeah.
Only job is to determine culpability. If you make an exception in the case where someone's defense is that they were too mentally ill to understand what they were doing, I don't know how you can reasonably carve out an exception to jurors not being concerned about sentencing in this one instance, because if you do it, you're only doing it to satisfy their desire not to have this person walk free, which
I got it.
When you look at other regular cases.
Can I ask can we stay on this for another minute? You were a prosecutor for a lot of years. You have covered some of the worst criminal trials, Marjorie, ever in your columnist, your reporting days. Do you know of a parent of young kids who killed the kids who intended by what law of what intention means under law, who meant to
Susan Smith.
She's the one that drove into the lake.
South Carolina. I think she knew exactly what she was doing.
You covered that trial, right?
I did. She drove her two little children, 3 and 1, into a lake and
why'd
let
she do
them
it? I
drown
forget.
because her boyfriend didn't want to deal with
kids.
children.
Okay. Last question for me is I'm sorry. Go ahead. What's that?
Diane Downs.
I don't know.
Diane Downs was the subject of the book, The Burning Bed.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. Tell us about that.
She was with a guy who didn't want kids.
Yeah.
So here's
the woman. There was a woman, I forget her name, Andrea. Maybe you remember. She drowned her 5 children. I thought, Andrea, what was her name?
Andrea Yates.
Yeah, Andrea Yates. I thought she was, she seemed to be mentally ill to me, too.
She was not guilty by reason of insanity, if I recall. I believe. Last question. The judge, I think yesterday, barred a number of expert witnesses on these issues that the defense wanted to call. And my understanding is the reason they barred these witnesses is because the defense was late in advising the court, the prosecution, they're going to do it. I'm assuming that that is a decision that a judge can revisit, right? Or am I wrong about that?
I think so. As the case moves forward, subject to the experts' continuing availability as the case moves forward, obviously. But yes, and I think a judge will be mindful of that option because late disclosure in a very, very serious case, that can be a basis for appeal.
Yeah.
The fact that you allow the defense, even having disclosed late, to call a particular expert witness, that can be problematic down the line should there be an adverse finding.
Did you mention at the beginning, for those who aren't following this, that after she killed the kids, she tried to kill herself?
Yeah, she tried to kill herself.
Right, jumped out the window.
And
she's paralyzed.
And she was
from the waist
getting
down.
all these different medications for postpartum depression. I mean, she was under psychiatric care. There was some allegations she was getting too many medications. She was looking up
that's
things
the
about
core of their defense,
being a
right?
sociopath.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It sounds like she could have been, but I'm not on the jury. I don't know. But I wanted to get to something else with you, Andrea. A lot of Democrats are probably very mad with Phil Murphy used to be the governor of Maryland, because it took the following governor, Mickey Sherrill, to announce, and this adds fuel to Trump's argument about non-citizens voting, that about 6,000 residents in New Jersey were improperly registered to vote. It wasn't their fault. They signed out it was a software error, and they did identify themselves as non-citizens, but nonetheless, 400 of them got to cast ballots in New Jersey a couple of years back. What do you think?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's shame on Phil Murphy for not disclosing it, but this is clearly a software error.
Right.
For the register, what they call it, the DMV, I think, Registry of Motor Vehicles was what we call it here. And it's not like, I understand your point about, it being fodder for Trump, but it's not like the Trump administration needs actual fodder in order to lie about the election. Right. So they would, if this were absolutely nothing, they would make something out of it. It turns out that it is something, but not anything that could have caused a difference in either the local state election or the national election. I think what Mikey Sherrill is doing in terms of trying to protect the individuals who were registered and thought that they could vote because the state told them that they could. I think her trying to protect them from the federal government is a much bigger deal and much more necessary. But, clearly, I don't think you're going to find, it's not a case where the state was intentionally registered people they knew who were ineligible to vote in order to undermine an election. That is not the case there. That won't change the fact that the Trump administration will make that accusation. Because they have precious little evidence of voter fraud except among Republicans. But, it is.
Except on behalf of Trump, I should say. We've all heard the phone call to the Secretary of State. If I may, we only have a couple minutes. I intellectually, I am totally with you. They don't need facts to make their case. I think this is really damaging, despite your perspective, for two reasons. One, because they were never able to cite anything, and now they can cite something, even if it was not consequent. Exactly. And number two, what's even worse to me, and to the credit of Sherrill, she criticized her fellow Democrat, her predecessor, Murphy. He engaged in a cover-up here. He knew this, and he learned it and chose never to disclose it, I assume in the hopes that it would never get out. So it's a twofer. Not only does the public now know that in one state, even if it was only a software glitch, it was not intentional, that 400 undocumented people were able to vote in an election, but the Democratic governor of the state, the prior Democratic governor, attempted to cover that up and not let the public know that it happened. I hope I'm wrong, but I think this is really a nightmare in the making.
I don't know that I wouldn't characterize it necessarily as a nightmare, but I agree with you that it was an unforced error to the extent that this was a software issue that they could have come clean about. The other one small point I would like to make is that actually the software error led to 6,600 non-citizens being registered. Only 100 of them actually voted. And so there are a number of things I think we can sort of say about that. What it really means is that the majority of the non-citizens who are registered to vote still didn't vote. They still didn't do it, right? The 400 may have just misunderstood, but in terms of wanting to constantly blame,
I agree with you.
Documented for trying to influence an election, that is the exact opposite of what this evidence shows.
That is true. Andrea Cabral, good to see you. And the sound actually worked and your voice is back. Doesn't get much better than that. Good to see you.
Thank you, Andrea.
Take care.
We have been speaking with Andrea Cabral, former sheriff of Suffolk County and former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety and a BPR contributor. We say goodbye to those of you listening on NEPM. Thanks for tuning in. The 413 is on this afternoon at 3 and NEPM. We're going to keep going here in Boston. After this quick break, co-founder of 35.org and founder of ThirdAct.com, environmentalist Bill McKibben is next. He's going to talk to us about all the smoke we endured all across the country from those Canada wildfires, and some good news, about progress we're making on clean energy. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
If you're a GBH sustainer and you received a new bank or credit card in the mail recently, there's an easy way to update your information. Just visit gbh.org/update and keep your membership up to date. That's gbh.org/update.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Mass General Brigham Health Plan, providing helpful digital tools, world-class providers, and coverage that help you live in the moment. More at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. And Cambridge Trust, a division of Eastern Bank, offering business and personal wealth management and private banking services, investing more than $240 million in local communities since 1994. More at cambridgetrust.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you?
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. Relationship Love Letters columnist Meredith Goldstein will join us. We'll have some great live music. Between 11 and 12 on July 29th, we'll be joined by the Governor, Maura Healey, and we're going to be joined by the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Joy Campbell, on August 11th, also at the library. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. We're joined now via Zoom by environmentalist Bill McKibben. Bill's an author, educator, co-founder of 350.org, founder of ThirdAct.org. His latest book is Here Comes the Sun, A Last Chance for the Climate and a Fresh Chance for Civilization. He also has a newsletter on Substack titled The Crucial Years, writes regularly for The New Yorker. Before I introduce Bill, though, we have a quick question for him. We want to know what makes him happier. Saying this to Ezra Klein.
Even better than the EV is the e-bike, which I think may turn out to be the transformative invention of our time on Earth.
Or is it this?
The Red Sox win their 15th in a row to tie the all-time franchise record from 80 summers ago.
Okay, tell the truth. Raise your right hand. What makes you happier, the e-bike or 15 in a row, Mr. McKibben?
I think I got to go with the Red Sox right now. And I think it's because, I mean, it would have been one thing if it had been, the kind of season that people had predicted from the start. But we were in such a horrible... could not have been worse. And then all of a sudden things turned around. So maybe we can take that as an omen for all kinds of things.
I
Yeah.
love this.
Well, I'm a big fan of Ezra Klein. I love his podcast. We'll get to that in just one second because I was so happy to hear you on the podcast. But since we were just enveloped in this horrible smoke here in Detroit and Ohio and all around the country, you up in Vermont, I guess, as well, the president blamed that on the Canadians not managing their forests. I see you're not taking that as a good reason.
The president, you'll recall, bawled out Californians for not raking their forests.
Yeah.
The last time we had a huge fire there. If you could make any kind of argument in California about any of that, you can't make it in Canada. These are forests that no one has ever managed or ever will manage. They are vast, trackless, boreal wilderness across the top 3/4 of that country. There are no roads. There's no way to go fight fires in them and prevent smoke from pouring back across the border. The reason that they're burning is because the carbon dioxide that mostly we have emitted has spewed across every border on planet Earth, raising the temperature and making it possible to have vast fires in places where there never were vast fires before. It's hot now in the far north of Canada. It dries out earlier in the year because there's much less sea ice in the Arctic, and it sets the conditions for these vast fires that have now marked 3 of the last 5 years. The biggest year, I think, was 2023, and that year, Canada, which has only about 40 million people, was the 4th largest carbon emitting nation on Earth, behind China, the US, and India. But it's not the Canadians' fault. And the idea that we're going to slap tariffs on them and they're going to get their act together and keep their forests from somehow turning into conflagrations is on the list of silly things that our president has said, right up there.
Whenever we speak to you, I'm always wondering, Bill McKibben, about what changes people's minds. And you wrote a piece in the New Yorker about the National Weather Service, which I believe people in red states are at least as reliant upon as people in blue states. Does the inability to make the kinds of predictions that keep people and their businesses safe and successful, does that cause doubters to become believers, or am I naive?
You would hope so. I was just out in Colorado a few weeks ago interviewing this fellow, Dan Swain, who's one of the most important wildfire researchers in the world. We were standing outside his office in Boulder against a very brown sky from the huge forest fires there that have killed a number of people, including, by the way, a Canadian firefighter who volunteered to come down and help and died fighting that fire. Swain was saying that there are now days when there are essentially no weather balloons launched in the interior West, at least in the morning, and their ability to forecast what's happening is severely degraded. This is, the kind of thing that our government has routinely done for a century or more, but now, just in the same way that we can't be bothered to monitor the health and safety of our lettuce, we can't be bothered to take the daily temperature and be able to predict with granular detail what's going to happen.
And the other thing that's been so upsetting this summer is the record heat all over the world. I mean, people dying in places like France. Seems to be becoming the new normal.
Well, Phoenix, what is Phoenix about? What is it,
Phoenix,
118,
right.
120, whatever the hell it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and it's hotter than that in places that we don't think about quite as often. It was 128 degrees in parts of Iran last week.
128?
128. Try to imagine how people think about their desalination plants being bombed out of existence when the temperature's in the 120s. Look, this is we're seeing what we're seeing right now is exactly what scientists told us would happen. When you raise the global average temperature, you increase the possibility for big heat waves. When you monkey around with the jet stream, which we have done by melting much of the Arctic, you set up the creation of these more of these heat domes that concentrate heat in particular places. And all of this, Marjorie and Jim, is before we really get the effects of the El Nino that is rapidly developing in the Pacific and looks like it's going to be historic in scale. That's like ripping the door off a sauna. There is so much heat stored up in the oceans right now that we're going to see absolute record temperatures around the planet later this year and next. And that will drive yet another round of this kind of chaos.
Speaking of that, obviously the heating of the seas has part of the impact that you're talking about. Use the word that I'm embarrassed to say I never heard before when describing the level of heat in some of the oceans, and then compared it to what happened in Hiroshima. What's the word? Is it Joulette or what?
Yeah, joules, yes.
What is it? What are they?
These are measures of heat and of energy. An easier way, since they don't really mean anything to any of us, I've translated it into the heat equivalent of atomic bombs, and we're releasing the heat equivalent of something like 400,000 Hiroshima-sized bombs a day with the extra heat that we trap with our carbon and methane. That's how we're able to melt 50% of the sea ice in the summer Arctic. I mean, this is meters thick, millennia old, continent wide sheet of ice. It takes extraordinary amounts of energy to melt it, but that's what we've provided.
So, Bill McKibben, I asked you. Oh, you.
I was just going to say you do have some good news in a lot of what you've written, and a lot of what you're talking about when you did the Ezra Klein interview. And one of the things you always hear from people that can't get worked up about climate change is, well, doesn't matter if we do stuff because China and India aren't doing anything. And you disabused us of that notion many times before, but disabuse us again.
Well, China is doing a lot, man. They've built something like half the clean energy in the world in the last 5 years, and they're continuing to. They just announced their most recent plans yesterday, which is, I think, for another increase of 53% in solar energy by 2030. They're pioneering all the other technologies too. EVs are now pouring out of China into the rest of the world. And the only reason they're not pouring into here is because we've erected a 100% tariff wall to keep them out, with the understanding that they're now producing better cars than we are. Our willingness to surrender technologies that were, of course, invented in the US, lock, stock, and barrel over the last 18 months to our chief theoretical adversary in the world, is the greatest act of economic national self-sabotage I think we've ever witnessed. And at the moment, it's showing no signs of improving. The federal government continues its all-out war on renewable energy, and in so doing, the kind of all-out war on the economic future of our kids and grandkids. It's really one of the most remarkable things that's been going on over these last remarkable 18 months.
Let's stay with Ezra Klein for a second, and your comment about what may turn out to be the transformative invention of our time on Earth. I'm hyperbolic, but I don't know if I would say that kind of thing. So what's the reality of the e-bike in 2026 there, Bill McKibben?
The reason e-bikes are so important is that there are a lot more people on planet Earth who can afford a bike than can afford a car. And a lot more places that have roads suitable to bikes than suitable to cars. And so the sales of these things are through the roof. And they fill a really important niche. really more than a niche. If you think about it, there are an awful lot of things for which a bike is better suited than a car. Really, urban transit, if you've been to a city like Copenhagen or Amsterdam or something, or now Paris, the fact that they're now clean and quiet and people just expect to move about by bike makes them remarkable places. Um, one of the things that gets in the way of adoption of bikes is hills. It's harder to get yourself up a hill on a bike than it is on a car. But that disappears when you have an e-bike. They are a bicycle with no hills. And they're a bicycle with no showers, you don't get sweaty if you don't want to. So there are, and on a nickel's worth of electricity, you can go 25, 30, 35 miles. I mean, it's really astonishing what powerful technology this is.
How are they doing in the U.S.?
Well, they're doing pretty well, but of course, we get, as everything, someone tries to make a quick buck, and in the American case, it's always by trying to make things more powerful. So they've emerged alongside the e-bike these things that are essentially smaller motorcycles that don't even really require you to pedal. They just have a throttle on them, but they get called e-bikes and they end up kind of terrorizing the bike path and making it harder for places to adopt sensible rules about e-bikes and things. I think that's starting to shake out and we're starting to figure it out. But the place where they're really exploding is Africa and Asia. And that's good. That's the place where we most badly need them to.
You know, Bill, I asked you a couple of minutes ago if minds were being changed by, for example, this cutting back dramatically of the National Weather Service. Let's move from changing minds to changing behavior. Last time we saw you, one of us asked you if rising gas and diesel prices, for example, and I'm not sure the grocery impact had kicked in yet, but now it has. Oil prices, I think, have gone up roughly 40% in the last month, and there's no sign in this clueless, endless war that any of that's going to change except for the worse. Is that causing behavioral changes yet, or is it too soon to be able to figure that out?
Well, it's definitely causing behavioral changes all over the world. Some of them are really grim and difficult to deal with. There's a great piece in the New York Times today that I highly recommend to people about what it's like to be a peasant farmer in Bangladesh right now. And when you can't get diesel to run your irrigation pump. The only good news there is that Pakistan, one country over, its history tragically intertwined with Bangladesh, has managed over the last 18 months to convert most of its farmers to solar electric pumps.
That's what I meant. I didn't mean, by the way, I misspoke. I understand the pain, obviously,
Yeah.
and I saw the piece, but are things like what you're just describing happening? And
Yes, they're definitely starting to happen, but the problems are, one, the infrastructure is there and built and it takes a little while, and two, we're systematically impoverishing people in the process of all of this, which makes it that much harder to afford the new equipment that you need. In a rational world, we would be looking at all of this and taking it as the main task for the rest of the planet to devote the remainder of this decade to spreading cheap solar panels everywhere we could as a development tool, as a climate fighting tool, as some kind of payback for the problems that we've caused by filling the atmosphere with carbon and methane. Instead, our government is, as you said earlier, demanding tariffs out of Canada. By the way, that's an important thing to watch. One of the things that I think Donald Trump is doing without thinking about it, a common practice of this, is opening the door to the rest of the world demanding payback for all the climate damage that we've caused. the principle is much sounder than going after Canada for smoke. There's real damage there, and there are increasing number of lawsuits and things from all over the planet. The Congress is now debating and whether or not to grant the oil industry immunity from any liability for the damage that they've caused. And that's a very important decision because it's that liability that allowed us to take on the tobacco industry, the asbestos industry, the opioid industry. We spared the gun industry legislatively any liability for their products, and hence they've had there's no leash on them. But these questions will probably be decided this year in the Congress, and they're of great importance.
Speaking of fossil fuel, since you are much more able, apparently, to get to Jonathan Swan than we are so far. Jonathan Swan is the co-author with Maggie Haberman of Regime Change.
Yeah, #1.
One of your pieces,
bestseller.
you quote from the book about that early meeting that a lot of us knew about, but we didn't know about at this level, with the leaders of the fossil fuel industry and the re-elected president of the United States. Could you share a brief description of that incredible time?
It's shocking even by the standards, the degraded standards that we're now used to. Apparently the oil industry just walked in there, sat down with Trump, with Stephen Miller, with Marco Rubio, and they would just say one thing after another, and some member of the cabinet would say, "I'm on it. We'll take care of that right away, sir." And according to their reporting, by the end, even the oil executives were a little stunned and a little, I think, a little worried at the fact that instead of, they're used to eventually buying their way into what they need in our political system, but this was almost too easy, It's if the degree to which, on a functional level, the current administration just exists as a cat's paw of big oil is truly, truly remarkable.
Where are you, by the way? This is the most beautiful environment you've ever spoken to us from. Is this your house? I don't mean to pry, but since you're on Zoom,
these are my endless collection of my problem in the world is too many books. And I just slowly fill up every space I'm in with more books.
it is so warm and so beautiful. It is really a soothing kind of thing in an unsoothing
He's in
time.
Vermont, the most beautiful state.
I know.
We all love Vermont.
It's a beautiful place.
Bill
Well,
McKibben,
congratulations
thank
on your win. Marjorie tells the story that when she took her kid when she was a columnist to the Roland rally for the Patriots, your son kept saying, "We won, we won," and Bill McKibben did the exact same thing, describing the 15-game winning streak.
Right.
You won. Congratulations, Bill McKibben.
The speed at which you can throw those fastballs is incredible. Thank you very
I've been
much.
working on it. Take care, y'all.
It's good to see you, Bill. Thanks so much for your time.
We have been speaking with environmentalist Bill McKibben, author, educator, co-founder of 350.org, founder of thirdact.org. His latest book is Here Comes the Sun, a last chance for the climate and a fresh chance for civilization. He also has a newsletter on Substack titled The Crucial Years and writes regularly for The New Yorker. He's just wonderful. Coming up for this quick break, it's been a busy week for Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth and the American War Machine. We'll do a quick recap of some things you may have missed. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy, listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, it was a sci-fi horror cult classic of the 1980s, whose title is now shorthand in certain online spaces for President Trump's cabinet and the broader MAGA movement.
C.H.U.D. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers. They're not staying down there anymore.
We peek beneath the manhole cover today at 1 on the Curiosity Desk.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Peabody Essex Museum, Salem's destination for authentic witch city lore and witch trials history since 1799. Ticket information and more at PEM.org. And Subaru of New England. The all-wheel drive 2026 Subaru Outback is designed for summer adventures. Subaru retailer locations at SubaruofNewEngland.com.
Welcome back to BPR 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back at the library tomorrow. Before we get to our usual Thursday frivolity, am I the a-hole? Marjorie, both of our heads are about to explode today about this potentially endless war and the grotesquely cavalier way that Trump is dealing with the latest deaths of service members. And then this morning, it's only symbolic, but the House voted with 4 Republicans voting with all the Democrats they passed the resolution to essentially rein in the campaign in Iran. And again, it's only symbolic, but it got us to thinking that we should spend a few minutes sharing with you some sound and some thoughts about the state of things. We played this yesterday, but it's worth playing again. Here's Georgia Senator Jon Ossoff, who's up for re-election, by the way, grilling, I guess you'd say, Defense Secretary Hegseth. This is on Tuesday, about whether the U.S. military secured what he had called an overwhelming victory in Iran in April. You'll first hear the senator, and then you'll hear Hegseth's response.
And you stated we had, quote, achieved every single objective. Were those accurate statements?
It certainly was, on behalf of the men and women in uniform, a historic military victory over Iran.
Had Iran's military been rendered, quote, combat ineffective for years to come? That was a statement that you made 4 months ago.
They had 160 naval vessels
in the Blue
answer
Water
the
questions,
Navy,
Mr.
and
Secretary.
Their Air Force
you
is
said 4 months ago.
combat ineffective.
You know, they have, and by the way, they're not the first administration to lie to the American people about war, but their unwillingness to answer almost any questions about the reality of this war or to acknowledge how clueless and wrong and how they've been and how much they've misled the American people is stunning and painful.
Well, if they had obliterated Iran's ability to make nuclear bombs, we wouldn't gone in there the second time around. And obviously, they're not combat ineffective because they've been able to attack American military bases. I mean, we've had people who have died and many people who have been injured from these attacks.
We're going to get into that. Let's talk about something that Trump said again yesterday. This is, immediately after the latest deaths. He's in Georgia, I think it was yesterday, and he describes how he likes to describe the war in Iran. Here's Trump.
Skirmish we have going on, I call it a skirmish. This is with this skirmish we have with the Islamic Republic of Iran, and I call it that because let me tell you, they're getting hit so hard, and they want to make a deal. But I say they're not ready to make a deal.
First of all, nobody believes that they're calling and saying we want to make a deal.
In the audience apparently believed it, which is just beyond understanding. They're all clapping and applauding.
Well, was it an excursion at one point? And most people think he called it an excursion because the staff member said it's an incursion, and he misheard them. And now it's a skirmish. And not only is it a way to minimize the seriousness of this deadly, clueless, endless effort, but it's also so it's not a war for purposes of Congress's responsibility to weigh in, which again the House did this morning.
By the way, we just heard Bill McKibben talk about 128-degree temperatures in Iran, and how Trump is talking about getting rid of their desalination ability, which means that they can't make water drinkable. I mean, he's talking about doing blowing up all these civilian things that you're not supposed to do. We always talk about
they're war crimes.
They're war crimes. Yeah, we keep saying they're war crimes, but no one ever seems to be prosecuted for war crimes.
Well, we're not a member of the International Criminal Court, which is convenient. Can we stay on we want to spend the last few minutes on these deaths. Trump, in one of the crassest things, but not the crassest thing, to try to minimize the deaths of service members, the 18 that have died so far, puts out this post on Truth Social, which I assume most of you have seen, and he goes through other wars. Afghanistan War, 20 years, 2,000 dead. Iraq War, 9 years, 4,600 dead. And then goes at the bottom of the list. Venezuela War, 1 day, 0 dead. Iran military conflict, doesn't even call it a war. 4 months, 18 dead. The point of that is to say it's very short, even though he told us it was going to be over in a day or two, and only, in quotes, 18 dead. What was your reaction when you saw that?
You know, you look at this young woman, 19 years old, Isabella Gonzalez. She was a private in the Army. She was killed. I mean, you just look at her, and it breaks your heart. 19 years old, First Lieutenant Tyler Feehan. He was from Hawaii. He was killed. You have another woman, Sergeant Angel Rampersand, 28, Ozone Park, New York. She was killed during an enemy attack on an air base in Jordan. And Army Sergeant Michael Emmanuel Swinton, 30 years old, Fayetteville, North Carolina. Look at these people. Obviously, they've got mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and children, and they're gone. We're
going to end with that. If, you know, he did go to the dignified transfer.
He did,
which he went to. Immediately after that, he said this, and maybe I'm overreacting. I don't think I am. Of all the despicable things he has done of late, this is so low, so self-serving, when he is so proud of himself for having done what any president would do when these bodies came back to this country. Here is Trump claiming that he knows that the 4 fallen soldiers whose names Marjorie just read were supportive of his alleged goals in this war before they were killed. Here's Trump.
All of them said very strongly, we cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. They won't have a nuclear weapon. So we're going to honor them.
I don't want to hear the rest of this. I'm sorry, I can't take. Let me repeat what he just said. All of them said, this is the 4 service members who died. All of them said very strongly, we cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. Every military person I saw I didn't watch Fox News, I must admit, who I saw either on television, heard on radio, or I read in the newspaper, said how grotesquely disrespectful this is, how this is not how people in the midst of combat and service speak, but because it served Trump's needs, even after he honored their service and their death by attending the dignified transfer, had to make a statement to support his alleged goals in this thing. What was your reaction to this?
Well, he just makes it was disgusting. Obviously, there's so many things he says are disgusting, but it's ridiculous. He ripped up the agreement that would have kept us from having a nuclear weapon without many months in advance notification, with rigorous inspectors.
With no deaths.
With absolutely no. That was the Obama agreement that he ripped up after he got in office. And, the Iranians are capable of building another nuclear weapon. They have the scientific knowledge to do it, and they have more of an incentive to do it now. So he's made things worse.
Well, he's also made things worse, I think you said yesterday, by cutting this deal with the Saudis, which he's trying to back out of today, by the way. We're not going to get into that. By making the deals with the Saudis, which will allow them to nuclearize themselves up, allegedly not to have a bomb, further reason for Iran to do exactly what he says he's going to stop them from doing.
Remember how we talked endlessly about nuclear proliferation, how the United States needed to work so hard for decades not to have nuclear proliferation. And then he just says he's going to make this deal with the Saudis. And the reporter, David Sanger, that reported on this, implied in his stories that this was really about making
investments,
making money for his family. So
that.
let's have more nuke weapons. Let's not worry about the whole world, but we'll make some more money for the Trumps and the 2 sons and the son-in-law, Jared Kushner.
You know, we have not talked enough about this. We're going to try in the days ahead to talk more about the latest developments, honoring those people who served, particularly those people who gave their lives to their service. But we just wanted to bring you up to speed on what the latest was from the people who are leading us into this skirmish.
Okay, coming up after this quick break, this is Am I the A-hole Day? It's always a difficult transition.
What it is.
All it takes, though, is one neighborly favor for you to become known as a local handyman. So if you are a local handyman, are you a jerk for refusing your services when you are off the clock from your day job and your neighbors expect you to come over and fix everything in their house for free? And it's not just handyman, of course. It's people that are really good at tech. It's people like Jim that are really good at talking. I
don't think my neighbors are coming over and saying, can you talk a little bit for me, please?
People want you to come talk at their events, Jim.
Well, that's a little bit different than a neighborly thing.
They're all after you.
Okay, fine.
Okay, so you can weigh in. We have a bunch of scenarios. We're going to tell you all about them up next. And Am I the A-hole? Our number, 877-301-8970 to call or text. You're listening to BPR 897 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Soraya Wintersmith. Today on GBH's All Things Considered, hundreds of thousands of Haitian nationals living in the U.S. could soon face deportation, what that could mean for families and their U.S.-born children. Plus, we'll take you to a rally in Boston where advocates and some public officials are pushing for an extension to protect those Haitians locally. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Newport Mansions, presenting Revolution Reimagined, a new exhibit at Rosecliff exploring Newport, Rhode Island's role in the American Revolution and how later generations reshaped the city's collective memory. NewportMansions.org. And the Cape Playhouse in Dennis Village, now playing Hairspray, the Tony Award winner for Best Musical, a joyful romp through the early 60s based on John Waters' iconic film. Tickets for Hairspray at capeplayhouse.com.
Welcome back to BPR 89.7 GBH. Mark Regan, Jim Browdy, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow, Governor on the 29th, Attorney General on the 11th of August. It's time for Am I the A-hole, where our staff brings us, in this case, I'm pretty convinced this is real. This one is, I think it's from Reddit, I'm not sure. And we have you debate who's the real jerk or the a-hole in this scenario. Today's prompt is from a mechanic who loves what he does, but is becoming increasingly annoyed at his neighbors who are requesting he fix their cars while he's home trying to relax, off the clock, enjoying his family or whatever else one does when they're not working. I wouldn't know what that is, but I've heard that some people do go off the clock. One neighbor, Dave, comes to this mechanic neighbor requesting some free work because he couldn't afford the shop prices. The mechanic kindly fixes his brake pads and rotors, whatever they are, and didn't charge a fee. This is unbelievable, only to be told by Dave, the guy with the car, that the mechanic who did the work for free took too long because he took a 30-minute lunch break. It doesn't end there. Shortly after that, Dave goes back to the mechanic who did the free work and whose work he trashed because it was too slow, and says to the mechanic, I have another thing. It won't take long. Can you help me with it? And what does the mechanic say? No. So this is pretty cut and dry to us. We want to know your thoughts on who is the a-hole here. The neighbor who is the complainer, asks for free work, gets it, and then complains, or the mechanic who obviously has great skills, who chooses the second time to just say no. But in light of the fact that we assume almost everybody is going to say the a-hole is the guy who requested the free work and then complains and requests it again.
And went around the neighborhood telling all the
bad-mouthing him. I
neighbors.
forgot about that.
Yeah, how terrible he was. That he was holding his professional skills hostage.
So we want to know, in addition to who's the a-hole, everybody listening to our show has some area of expertise. When you go home, if a neighbor asks you to share that expertise with, for example, if someone went over to Marjorie and said, you're a great writer, could you help me with something I'm writing? Or they might say, can you give me a recipe for prune chicken? Whatever, that kind of thing. Someone might come to me, and by the way, this does happen. It occasionally happens. Oh, let's talk about the presidential race. I know you're talking about it on the radio. Let's talk about that. Or you're an accountant and someone says, can you help me with my taxes? How do you feel when you go home and you get away from whatever you do for a living, even if you love what you do, which this mechanic does as well, when your next door neighbor or the guy down the street or the person down the street says to you, can you just give me 10 minutes of your time to help me do X? What's your reaction to that? 877-301-8970. Do you? You're a sap. You help everybody with anything.
I would,
you do anything for anybody.
No, that's not true.
That is totally true.
I think if someone asked you to edit something of theirs, that's a lot of work.
Have you ever said no to a neighbor for anything? Ever?
You know what I do all the time?
What?
I ask, the reason I have children, ask them for tech help. Isn't that what you do with your children?
We're not talking about your kids.
Well, they hate it. They hate it.
Yeah, but your kid is close enough to you, they can say, I don't want to do it. It's a little bit different. We're talking neighbors, people who live in your community, who know what one does, and ask you to provide that service for them
I
for
understand
free.
half of Inman Square over there in Cambridge come over to ask you to be their MC to set the tone at their event that they're having.
And by the way, and I want to know, I'm totally respectful. I always say the same two words. How much? And depending upon what the answer is, I'm more than willing to. This is about free help in whatever your expertise is. This guy's a mechanic.
Here's a good one.
What?
This is talking about this woman that gets asked all the time to watch your friend's dog. And they've, watched the dog for days at a time, sometimes for several days over Christmas time. And they've never gotten anything except a 12-pack of beer. And they said, we're sick of doing this. Shouldn't we get some kind of something? A
gift card
or something like that? Nothing. And that's really obnoxious.
The rule is you do it once if you're a decent person, if it's not horribly intrusive. And then you know what you do the second time, especially if you're not treated decently? Of course you say no. By the way, here's the one where I would help. An anonymous texter says, Jim, could you come over and help me load the dishwasher? And the reason for
you might do that.
if you're new to the show, is because I don't mean this arrogantly. I am as good at loading a dishwasher as anybody you've ever known. And I do like sharing that expertise.
Well, another texter says that they have a Morton's toe issue and they want Jim to help them with that.
Fine. Alexander in Duxbury, you are first on Who is the A-Hole? Welcome to the show. Hello.
Okay, Jim, here's the deal. Alexander for Duxbury. I am what Marguerite would call a daily communicant of BPR.
Oh, thank you very much.
Beautiful.
All right. Now, Jim, you're going to like this. You're a recovering lawyer. I'm a recovering lawyer.
That's true.
We got asked all the time legal opinions on topics. It drives me crazy. I grew up with a lawyer. The guy across the street happened to write soap operas. He'd walk across the street, interrupt our lunch, and want a free advice from my father on legal issues in the soap opera. I mean, doesn't this happen to you?
Well, occasionally I'm asked for legal advice. I have an easy out there as my response is I wasn't a very good lawyer. And when I say that, it generally reduces people's desire to get the advice. What do you do?
Oh, okay. So first of all, I say I'm a recovering lawyer. Second of all, I say the law is such a specialized thing. When I was a lawyer, I knew a few things about environmental regulatory law, and that is it. So you'll have to go elsewhere.
I like that, Alexander. Thank you for the call.
But that reminds me, though, I have done this before.
What is that?
And I knew it upset the person, so I stopped. If you have a friend, I have a good friend who's married to a physician, and I have asked him at dinner medical questions. He doesn't like it.
You have done that?
I have. I've stopped. I could tell you didn't like it. But I think a lot of people, if they happen to be friendly with a doctor or a nurse.
You know what I just realized? I was going to say you should never do that.
You've done it.
I've called Catherine Gergen Barnett. I just realized this is horrible. I'm literally shaking my head. How can you ask somebody who works like a dog to continue doing their thing on the house when I've done it?
My sister-in-law's a nurse. I used to ask her, my kids were little, all the time about
Okay,
stuff.
by the way, speaking of areas of my expertise, this anonymous texter really nailed it. He says, hey, Jim, my in-laws just came into town. They want to stay a month. Could you please come over and lecture them and annoy them and interrupt them so they leave early? You're the best. Thanks for your help. Okay, I got the message. Thank you, anonymous texter. 877-301-8970. By the way, if anybody thinks that the mechanic in this thing is the a-hole, we'd love to hear from you, too.
Oh, we have a mechanic
but we're
who
assuming,
just texted.
Oh, we do? What'd they say?
I'm a mechanic. The last thing I want to do in my time off is fix someone else's car. And if I do spend my time fixing someone else's car as a favor, the audacity that they would have to complain, I can't believe it. I would probably stop fixing it and tell them to do it themselves.
Well, that's what this guy did, at least the second time. And yeah, I've left out the most important part that you added, is the guy who was the complainer who got the free work then goes to all the neighbors and badmouths the thing.
Okay, and here's an engineer that I have empathy because I've done this to my engineer members of my family, doing tech help on his family's over the family holidays. Thanksgiving comes, Christmas comes, he spends his whole time trying to fix everybody's computer.
So you're like the worst at this is the bottom line. You've asked help on virtually. You asked me this. Well, I'm not your neighbor. I'm sort of your coworker.
I've asked you tax advice, Jim.
You have.
You're a tax expert.
I'm a tax man. Yes.
The tax man. I've asked you a lot of legal questions, I
You
think.
have. Have I ever answered one accurately or in a helpful
And you've asked
fashion?
me a lot of cooking questions.
I have.
Pronunciation
Can I tell you
questions.
something? Let me tell you how many times we asked Margaret cooking
Tongue-tiedness questions.
How about never? Is never good for you? Let's go to Maureen in Bradford. You're next. Bradford, hi.
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 I'm a realist. Hello.
Yeah, hello to you.
I'm a real estate appraiser.
Yeah.
Yes.
Everybody asks what their house is worth. I wouldn't tell my best friend. I wouldn't tell my sister. I tell nobody because that's the fastest way to end a friendship.
Oh, yeah. Well, now...
So what do you say, though? Maureen, what do you say to these people to avoid doing what you don't want to do an appraisal? What do you say?
I just tell them no. I says, I do not do it to anybody I know because it can cause hard feelings, so I won't do it. And
Maureen,
I tell them that's exactly what.
And how do they
Doesn't
react?
everybody go on Zillow now to see what their house is worth, Maureen?
Yeah, there's a real good place to check.
Maureen, thanks for the call. You're a good one. I like you already. Anonymous texter. I'm a genetic engineer. No neighbor has ever asked me to help modify their DNA.
That's a good one.
That is a pretty good one.
That's a good one. Oh, Carla from Seattle. As a former Carla from Seattle. As a former dental professional, the number of times people at parties, other gatherings, who've opened their mouths to show me their dental issues with questions about treatment. That's a good one. That's a good one.
I don't know if I've ever done that. I hang out with dentists from time to time. I do. I don't know if I've ever asked for dental advice.
I've asked for a lot of tech help, tax help.
Yeah.
You feel like if there's somebody in your house, if there's some house issue. Now we have a handy woman. We both have the same handy woman. She's great.
Do.
But if you have a house issue,
BostonHandyWoman.com. She's fabulous.
I think you can
Sarah
ask
Solomon.
in a pinch for someone to help you that you know is handy. But then you got to do something, right? You got to give them a gift card or a case of their favorite beer. You got to do something for them.
But you know what I do? I'm trying to think through
and don't
this
do it more than once.
Because I abuse this. I was starting to say how horrible it was, and again, then I realized I've done it often. What I try to do, but this is not acceptable. I'm going to do self-criticism. By the way, I always say it is totally fine to say no. But then I realize, of course, that no one believes you really mean that, right? Isn't that the case?
That they don't think you're...
When you say it's okay to say no,
Yeah.
what you're basically saying is please don't say no.
Yeah.
It's only going to take I only want 2 minutes of your time. You shouldn't ask. It really shouldn't. Should you ask? Wait a second. Is it okay to ask or not? Is it okay to ask or not?
Well, I think it depends on the situation. Like if you have some like catastrophe over at your house and you can't get someone over there to help you fast enough, you know the guy down the street is really good at something. I don't think it hurts to say, can you
Why don't you say up front, can I give you something for this? And they'll probably say no, but at least
But you give it to them anyway. You give it to them anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
But you don't try too hard to give it to them. You give you sort of give it a little, and then you don't. Let's go to John in the car. John,
Hi,
welcome
John.
to the show. Hi.
Hey, guys. How you doing? Love listening to you guys.
Thanks.
I love hearing Marjorie's voice. It gives me some soothing time.
Oh,
That's beautiful.
thank you. Thank you.
No, I mean that. I mean that. I really do in this stressful environment that we're living in. My father had an interesting story. He was at the country club. He was a big golfer. And they were in the shower one day, and this one doctor who was a big member there, and this other member was bothering them, saying, listen, I got this growth on my back. I got this thing. I don't know what it is. And the doctor looks at it, goes over, listen, grabs it, pinches it off the guy's back. The guy's bleeding. And he says, that's nothing. It'll heal right up. I cracked up.
That is a good
Pinched
one.
it right off the guy's back. It's gone. It'll heal up. Thank you guys for your time, the rest of the show, and I'll keep you in our prayers.
John,
God
you're a
bless.
good one.
Thank you. That was a
story.
great one.
So
That was a
here's the
great
anonymous texter.
Yes.
I'm a nurse, and I was once asked to help a neighbor check the blood sugar on her cat.
Her cat?
She had to give it insulin and was struggling, so I helped her. I never done anything with animals. I ended up sticking myself a few times.
no.
We finally got the blood, and then she wanted me to tell her how much insulin to give. I said I didn't know. I told her to call her vet, and I left the next day. She's knocking at my door again. I pretended I wasn't home. By the way, let me tell you something. I shouldn't say this because I assume some of my neighbors are listening.
Oh, go ahead.
Nobody is better at pretending they're not home than I am. I have to say, I'm serious. I am so good at pretending I am not home. And that is the best skill. by the way, which sort of obviates the need to address any of these kinds of
Okay.
help needs.
Here's
help
a vet.
requests.
She's not
Oh,
a
good.
doctor, but that's close. Catherine from Dartmouth. I'm a vet. Getting pet health questions from acquaintances is my pet peeve. Pun intended.
Yes.
That's it. I mean, I think that's true. That's one of the things people always ask. Nurses, doctors, vets, don't they always ask?
I would say lawyers. I mean, the
And
people in the
lawyers. And
professions
lawyers.
are probably right up there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know?
And engineers, you expect them to be able to fix everything. I mean, I was really happy that 2 of my children have wound up with engineers. It's been very convenient for me.
That's fabulous. By the way, Matt Winthrop says, not only is the neighbor, this is the guy who asked for the free mechanics help, but then complained that it was too slow. Not only is the neighbor the a-hole, he's probably a Trump voter with a Trump 2028 banner on his lawn. But we don't know that to be true, but it's possible.
Listen to Michelle, the pharmacist from
What'd she
Danvers.
say?
Always happy to help with drug information, but the people who ask for free
That is not true.
samples
Is that
are
true?
a bit much. Well, that's what Michelle, the pharmacist from Danvers, says, and I believe her.
Would you ask for free samples? I might ask for free samples.
Well, sometimes you go to the doctor and you just get them without asking.
How great is that?
It's really
Is
great.
that
When I go to
great?
get my, for the skin cancer things, for the sun,
Yeah.
I always leave with some free samples.
She's okay, by the way. You just
Yeah,
you're gonna make people
well,
nervous.
I have the redheaded
I know,
complexion.
and
And you have to check your skin a lot. I get the free samples of sunscreens, and that's very nice.
That's really great.
Isn't that nice, Jim?
Yeah, that's really nice.
Now, Peter
It's
in
a
the
great
North Store,
story.
speaking for millions of contractors who say this. I'm a contractor. I improve clients' homes all day. When I'm home, I don't even have the energy to help my wife work on my own home. That's the joke about don't ever marry a contractor because he'll never fix his
That's
own
a
house.
joke?
Yeah, something like that.
I never heard that
It was
joke.
something like that. They never fix their own home.
Wow.
Their home is falling apart and everybody else's
Who
home
said
looks
that?
great.
Like Groucho Marx?
I don't know who
said
it.
that?
Maybe it was Groucho
Churchill?
Marx.
Who was it?
Churchill, I don't know.
I don't know. I never heard that. Let's go.
Julius Caesar.
Homer.
Homer.
Everybody's talking
From
about Homer these
from the
days.
Odyssey.
We have to talk about that on
We
the show
do.
at some point. Maybe we should see it first.
We have to
This
see
would be a
it
good
first, I
thing.
think, to get into the fray.
Let's go to Leslie in Dartmouth. Hi, Leslie.
Oh!
What? Leslie.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Fine, thank you.
Good. I just want to say that my father was a very respected doctor, and whenever I asked him any questions about my health, he would say to me, "Go to your doctor."
Pretty good.
That is great.
Pretty
actually.
good.
How'd you feel about that?
It was fine, because it was his boundaries. I didn't get upset or anything, and it was probably better for me to hear the things that I needed from a different professional rather than my dad.
That's actually that's a really an important contribution. That's a good
that's
one,
a good
Leslie.
one.
Thank you.
Okay, anonymous texter says
Thanks.
try being a therapist at a party. You can imagine what that's like.
Oh my God.
And then another one says, my husband is an aesthetic plastic surgeon. People are constantly asking him what he thinks they need done. His first response is always, "Are you sure you want me to want to ask me that question? I'm very honest." And that answer usually makes people think twice.
Yeah.
Okay, therapist. That's going to be the worst. Can you solve my problems for
What
me?
do people? Did you say when you're asked to do things? What are you asked to do? I mean, you do have a number of skills. No, you do. You do.
Thank you, Jim.
No, I meant obviously.
People come ask you to talk and MC things.
Well, that is not the same thing.
It's not?
I don't think it is.
No one asked me anything, Jim.
So when you're out
I'm
in the
not
world,
exuding
Edgar B.
confidence, I
Herrick, you can
guess.
throw that in the recycling. Edgar B.
All right.
Herrick III. Do people tell you what they're curious about?
Yeah, they never shut up. No, I mean, they
They never shut up.
I never shut up, and I'm like, I'm not at work. I am not curious when I'm off the air.
That's right.
No
I
way.
love that.
If you're
That's
not
a good
getting paid
answer.
for it,
Yeah,
forget it.
exactly. I do it all day long. When I come home, I am not curious at all.
Well, I'm trying to think of what you're great at. You're a fabulous dancer, as everybody knows. Does anyone ever ask you?
Yeah, all the time. People ask. Yeah, especially people who are going to get married or they're going to a wedding or something like
Can
that.
you prepare me for my wedding?
Yeah, like, can you give us a
And
couple
do you?
tips? Yeah. I mean, I do. Sometimes it depends on the person. I don't think if it was just a random person in my neighborhood, I mean, who knows?
Teaching
I don't
someone
mind
to
it.
dance is hard.
It is. Well,
Yeah.
it depends. Some people pick it up a little faster than others.
What's
but,
your specialty?
Lindy Hop?
Lindy
the
Hop.
Lindy Hop.
The Lindy
Wow.
Hop.
Lindy Hop.
Wow. Okay.
Did you ever hear the story about us going ice fishing? And did we ever tell you that story? I'll tell you about it someday.
Yeah,
It was
I'd
great.
love
You
to
would've
hear
loved
it. It sounds like,
You really,
it was an amazing
What are
time.
you? Amazing. What are you doing on
Jim,
the
today
show?
is the day. Today is the day.
You're not doing the egg thing
We
today.
are doing the egg
Are you
thing
kidding?
today.
Why, there are
I am
12
not kidding.
eggs?
Explain
Why-
what it is.
I'm so excited.
Jim loves to ask every time I'm on here, when are you going to get to the bottom of why we have a dozen eggs?
I am
Today, Jim,
so
we
excited.
get to the bottom of it.
What time's that happening?
It's happening a little later in the show, about 1:45.
Oh, my God.
Set your alarm,
this
Jim.
Is so exciting.
But actually, Jim, you're a radio host. Do you want to just host the show for me?
I have
Just
things to do.
stick around
I have to
for
give
another
advice
hour.
to my neighbors. I'd love to help.
Okay. Thank you, Edgar. Okay, thank you very much for tuning in. Tomorrow we're going to be back at the Library of the Globe. Boston Globe Love Letters columnist Meredith Goldstein. Live Music Friday with two members of the Boston Festival Orchestra. Ahead of their show at Jordan Hall, Harvard Law School, Cyber Law Clinics, Alejandra Caraballo on transgender rights in 2026. As Massachusetts considers a social ban for minors, we'll hear from the Australian National University law professor Faith Gordon on what we can learn from what they did in Australia along social and the United Kingdom on social bans for kids. We want to thank our crew: Zoe Matthews, Hannah Loss, Ariana Loss. Additional support from Jack Siciliano, our stream today, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, our engineer, John the Club Parker, our executive producers, Jane Bologna, Jim Bryce got a great column in the Globe today.
Oh, thank you.
Called Too Many Ballot Questions. Blame Beacon Hill. It's a great column. Some very good lines in there, Jim. Did I give you those lines?
Some of them you may have. I don't remember.
Okay. And we do have too many
It's
ballot
about there are
questions.
9 ballot questions.
Yeah, it's too
It was
many.
determined 2 days ago.
We're going to
What
have
do we do
88
about
pages
that?
and there are instructions to vote thing.
In the Red Book, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, read it in the Globe.
Okay, Edgar and the Curiosity Desk is going to tell you why there's 12 eggs in a dozen all the time.
cannot
It's very
wait.
concerning. And then after that, a best of edition of the Culture Show with Jared Bowen. That starts at 2. I'm Marjorie Egan.
Jim Browley.
Thanks again for tuning in today.
Bye.
Hope you can tune in tomorrow and have a great day.
From the stories of centuries past to discoveries that will define our future, How Did We Get Here's, how-tos, and more. Journey with us down the rabbit hole on the Curiosity Desk. Coming up next on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And New Bedford Whaling Museum, presenting summer exhibits including Sailor's Valentines, Maritime Art from the Heart, Proteana, Susan Heidman, and Look Pleasant, Please, Early Portrait Photography in New Bedford, whalingmuseum.org.
And New England Recovery Center, providing inpatient addiction treatment in state-of-the-art facilities located in Westboro, Mass. Learn more at newenglandrecoverycenter.org or by calling 1-877-MY-REHAB.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, it was a sci-fi horror cult classic of the 1980s, whose title is now shorthand in certain online spaces: President Trump's cabinet and the broader MAGA movement.
C.H.U.D. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers. They're not staying down there anymore.
We peek beneath the manhole cover to look at how a B-movie can morph into a political meme 40 years later. Then, yesterday, the Red Sox tied their all-time win streak record, and then, mere hours later, lost to the Orioles 5-1. So what's going on in our brains when we are on those winning streaks, in baseball, in work, or in life in general? And what happens when they end? Plus, you've continued to send us great curiosity questions. We'll answer as many as we can. It's all ahead this hour on the Curiosity Desk.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump says Saudi Arabia needs to establish diplomatic relations with Israel in order to complete an agreement that provides them U.S. nuclear technology. NPR's Frank Ordonez reports the new condition throws the future of the agreement into doubt.
On social media, President Trump also said the deal would include no uranium enrichment. He said the deal is, quote, totally subject to Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords, an agreement that normalized relations between Israel and several Arab countries. But Saudi Arabia so far has been reluctant to join, which now throws into question the nuclear agreement. The new deal would allow the Saudis to build power plants using U.S. technology. It has raised many concerns across Washington and parts of the globe. Some leaders fear it could set off a nuclear arms race across the Middle East. Franco Ordonez, NPR News, the White House.
The U.S. Senate's preparing to vote on a war powers bill to limit the Trump administration's military activity against Iran after some Republicans joined Democrats in the House to vote for ending the conflict. But the White House has argued that after a failed ceasefire, it could reset a 60-day clock for carrying on the conflict without immediate congressional approval. A Florida man is suing OpenAI, alleging ChatGPT gave him dangerous medical advice during a health crisis. NPR's Shannon Bond reports AI companies generally have been promoting their chatbots as resources for health.
Scott Winters says he suffered a near-fatal pulmonary embolism last year after turning to ChatGPT about his health problems. He says the chatbot discouraged him from seeking medical care for his symptoms and gave him dangerous recommendations, including about taking prescription drugs. The lawsuit filed in California state court alleges OpenAI safeguards meant to urge people to seek professional advice failed Winters. OpenAI says in a statement that ChatGPT should not be used as a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. Winters is seeking damages and asking the court to order OpenAI to strengthen its guardrails around medical conversations. Shannon Bond, NPR News.
Hundreds of people protested in Madison, Wisconsin last night after a police officer fatally shot a man earlier in the day. Sarah Leah reports.
Protesters chanting and marching in downtown Madison shut down an outdoor concert that had been staged outside the state capitol building. The demonstration came a few hours after a Madison police officer fatally shot a man in his 30s at a busy intersection. Madison Police Chief John Patterson said, while police struggled to arrest him, the man pulled out a knife.
The officer who was injured by the knife is the same officer who fired his weapon at this man.
Police have not yet released the name of the man who died.
That's Sarah Leah reporting. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon with the latest from the GBH newsroom in Boston. I'm Craig Lamolt. State health officials say they're looking into the death of a dog and whether it's linked to possible toxic algae in the Charles River. This comes after the state urged residents to avoid contact with the river as they test for cyanobacteria between Needham and West Roxbury. Julie Wood is with the Charles River Watershed Association. She says cyanobacteria can thrive in hot weather and that people should take the warnings seriously.
I would say be cautious during these conditions where we're in a drought and temperatures are pretty steadily high.
The Department of Public Health says they're waiting for test results to confirm what caused the dog's death. Cyanobacteria can be toxic, with exposure causing illness in people and pets. It was a historic day at Fenway Park yesterday as the Red Sox picked up their 15th straight victory. The win in the first game of a doubleheader against the Baltimore Orioles tied a club record for consecutive wins that was set in 1946. And even though the team couldn't break the record after falling 5-1 to the Orioles in the second game, first baseman Wilson Contreras was looking on the bright side.
That was a great ride, 15-game winning streak. There's nothing to be sad about. We have to be happy. We should be proud of what we did. And from now on, just keep playing the way we've been playing lately.
The Sox are off today before taking the diamond on Friday against the Toronto Blue Jays. Beautiful summer forecast for the next several days. This is GBH.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One, offering their premium travel card, Venture X. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Details at CapitalOne.com. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
Welcome to the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We're streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. I would say if ever there was a day to join us on the YouTube stream, this might be it because one of our guests is in character. We're live at the BPL tomorrow. Well, let's get this show started. It is the stuff of B-movie dreams stowed away deep beneath the streets of New York. Cases and cases of chemical waste, turning street derelicts into cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers. Such is the plot of the 1984 horror classic, you know it, C.H.U.D.
Contamination hazard, urban disposal. This shit's contaminated. This shit is toxic waste.
They must have been dumping this stuff down here for years, right underneath the city.
Now, 40 years later, that term CHUD has morphed into a shorthand in left-wing circles to describe members of President Trump's cabinet and the MAGA movement more broadly. Of course, memes being what they are, it's also been used in a whole bunch of other ways, too. How that happened is the focus of a new multimedia punk show / movie screening / panel discussion up the Cut in Gloucester, presented by the one and only Joan Donovan. It is called CHUD Live. For tickets, you can go to thecutlive.com. Joan is with us now as a bespectacled chud. Joan is, of course, a Curiosity Desk contributor, founder of the Critical Internet Studies Institute, and author of Meme Wars, The Untold Story of the Online Battles Upending Democracy in America. She's joined today via Zoom by Mike Snoonian, host of the podcast The Pod and the Pendulum, which is about diving into the psychology behind horror films and TV. Joan Donovan, welcome back. Mike Snoonian, great to have you with us here on the Curiosity Desk.
Awesome to be here again.
Great to be on.
All right, Mike, let's start with you. Let's kind of establish for folks who have not seen CHUD. I gave a brief overview, but tell us, what is CHUD all about? Give us the synopsis.
Well, it's exactly
You're like, do
what
you
the
have
movie
an hour?
is.
Because I'm ready to go.
Do we have, it is the dad from Home Alone and one of the wet bandits
from Home
teaming
Alone,
up for the first time, which is kind of amazing. In early 80s, like New York City, at a time where that felt maybe a little scary, and wouldn't you know it, like the government is responsible for creating these humanoid cannibals that live underground. It's a really fun B movie. It's not quite what I would call like an exploitation film, like something like a female prisoner, Lady Scorpion would be. But it's a really fun B movie with good practical effects, a better cast than you would anticipate for something like this. And it's just like, it's got a little more on its mind than, say, like a slasher movie from the golden age of slashers would have as well. So
when you say it has a little more on its mind, what's going on underneath the surface? Like, I mean, it's touching on cultural anxieties of the time. Is there a psychological hook here that makes this, kind of stand out 40 years later a little more?
It's kind of like butting up against like the cultural anxieties and the fears we had coming out of the 70s, like during a period of time where we first started to really, for the first time, distrust the government and their intentions, coming out of Vietnam, coming out of Watergate, coming out of the OPEC and oil crisis. And you're butting against that directly with like Reagan's America, his vision of like a shining city on the hill, the morning in America, and the like, I'm not really buying what this guy is selling right now, and the government is up to some nefarious things that maybe I can't see them, but I know they're going on underneath the surface.
Joan, I'm going to bring you in just a second, but I want to play some sound from CHUD screenwriter Shep Abbott. Our producer, Aidan Connolly, had a conversation with Shep Abbott recently, and here's Shep explaining the origins of that term CHUD.
And I was telling them the story as I had developed it, and they wanted to know if I had a title, and I said, no, I don't. They said, what are these monsters? And I remember saying, well, they're cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers. And then I thought, that's CHUD. And I looked at them and I wondered if that was a good title. And they said, yeah, that's it.
There it is, your classic eureka moment. CHUD.
Yeah, he went on in the interview and he's told the story a few different times about CHUD also rhymes with mud and blood and crud. And so
there's something visceral about it.
There is something about the word CHUD that you're like, yeah, it's a nasty thing to call someone.
So let's talk a little bit about, I mean, we understand the movie. We're 40 years since the movie, but it doesn't just like emerge out of nowhere. How does it sort of retain a place in the culture in the intervening years through the 90s, through the 2000s? What happens to this movie in the sort of broader cultural consciousness?
Well, I would say, and Mike's probably even more of an aficionado of the late night scene, but it's shown worldwide at different movie festivals. It makes a great late night at the Brattle or whatnot, midnight movie. It was also referenced in The Simpsons, and a lot of people who do interesting things in Hollywood will once in a while mention the Chuds, like it would be on Saturday Night Live here and there. It would be just something in the ephemera. And for people who are like me, who watched the movie with like my dad, so for baby boomers and Gen X, Chud is cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers. But as society has progressed and moved, it's remained as a niche movie where anyone concerned with nuclear warfare or like radioactive waste, these kinds of things, any kind of festival that involves that, Chud comes back up. But it's really become an insult favored by Gen Z, where, around 2016, when Trump got reelected, Chapo Trap House, which is a well-known left-wing podcast, would call right-wingers Chud, and so it did start to have a renaissance in the last few years.
On the one hand, and we'll talk a little bit more in a minute about sort of what happens this term as it sort of becomes politicized, to a certain extent, as you're talking about, Joan. But I wonder, Mike, just broadly, I think on the face of things, somebody maybe who's not a huge horror movie fan might sort of go like, politics and horror movies, they have nothing to do with each other. But, as you point out, a movie like Chud, clearly it is addressing some political anxieties of the time. Can you talk to us more broadly about the relationship between politics and horror movies, both then and now?
I can try. I'll see if I can. Joan is much more intelligent than I am, so she could do a better job. But horror is a huge umbrella. And I think often when persons who say, I don't like horror movies, they think of like one specific type of horror they might not enjoy, whether it's like slasher, whether it's like torture.
It's home invasion for me.
You don't do home invasion?
No, if you're coming to my house and I don't know why you're there, forget about it.
For you.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to watch it.
And it's funny Joan says that. The movie I'm thinking of right now is like a home invasion movie in reverse, where the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which to me is like the greatest horror movie of all time, the first thing you hear in that movie after John Larroquette's introduction is like basically a news report of, I believe it's John Dean getting called to like a Senate subcommittee. Like Watergate is very much on the mind of like Tobe Hooper in that movie, to the degree there's a book, Leatherface versus Tricky Dick, which talks about all the connections between the Texas Chainsaw and the original and the Nixon administration. And horror often reflects the anxieties we feel as a culture and as of a people. And because you can play so broadly with metaphor often, that you can do things that maybe are going to be less explicit and you feel it more internally. And what's really interesting about like using Chud as an insult here is, number one, it rolls off the tongue. Totally. There's just something about the word Chud. When you hear it, like you're not referring to like something nice like ice cream and puppies. You just know you're insulting someone. Right. But what's interesting is where it's repurposed for like MAGA right-winger persons, the Chuds in the movie are actually very sympathetic. Like they are the unhoused population that like this was done to them. It's not something that they sought out to do. And in fact, like the government agencies, there's a different term for Chud that they had. And I believe it was about like removing this toxic chemical waste that was turning people into Chuds. They repurposed that acronym to refer to these monsters in order to deflect attention from their own crimes. And I think that speaks a lot to our own insecurities we feel now. Like we're living in a time of tremendous corruption at a political level. And just for what's out in the open would be career ending for so many folks. It's going to be decades before we like do more than scratch the surface. And I think horror is a way always, whether it's gender representation with the idea of like the final girl and women having agency over their bodies and themselves and fighting back. Like horror has always allowed persons to do that. And then from an economic level, horror movies can be very inexpensive to produce and still be very profitable. It opens up avenues for filmmakers that maybe would not have been able to do that before. And I've gone on for a long time. So
no, it's great. Yeah, we're both sitting here listening to you with rapt attention, Mike.
Yeah,
so
I'd go to that lecture.
Yeah, for sure. You're listening to The Curiosity Desk. We're talking with Joan Donovan and Mike Snoonian about C.H.U.D. By the way, thecutlive.com for tickets to the multimedia punk experience next Friday, the 31st, up in Gloucester, if you want to check that out. Well, Joan, let's sort of talk about how this became a meme and how this got adopted, by the left. In particular, kind of as Mike was pointing out, it's sort of on the face of it, if you just watch this movie, you would assume if anything is about it is being sort of embraced to to sort of take down the right, it would be the fact that the government is corrupt in this movie, but that's not what's happening here. It is this C.H.U.D term itself. So what happened? How did this sort of transmute into an insult for people on the left, for people on the right?
Yeah, so we usually think about meme wars as a struggle over meaning, right? And so the word C.H.U.D, for someone who's 45 and me, it means a movie.
Yeah.
But over the years, as younger people have adopted terminology and totally twisted and made their own meanings out of it, it could be that C.H.U.D was adopted by young people not because of the movie, but because of the term Chad.
Yeah.
Which is, the handsome man that always gets the girl. Young people that are obsessed with this notion of looks maxing, they see the Chad as the ultimate man. And so these...
It's like the Bizarro to Chad as Superman, right?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Just kind of C.H.U.D and Chad. Yeah, so that works.
And then some young people just use it to talk about chudding around. Like they just start, literally singing this song that's I'm a fat little chud, and they hang out at home, and bed rotting is something that young people like to do. So they might refer to the activity as being a chud. And so there's those layers which are different. But on the right, there was this moment where they were being called chuds and they decided they were just going to embrace it. And so we're talking about not the typical right wing that you think of when you're thinking of like politics, Trump and Vance. I'm talking about the underground of the internet, basically, 4chan, these anonymous message boards. And they started using a meme, which is a drawing of of a mass murderer, an El Paso mass murderer, and they started calling it the Chud Jack meme. And essentially, this guy in the meme wears a T-shirt that says, "The West has fallen, billions must die." And it's this callback to these horrible racist mass shootings that we had a really difficult time with copycats. If you remember, there was the Buffalo shooting, and then there was El Paso, and there was San Diego. And so it just kept happening. And so that meme, billions must die, and the Chud Jack image would sit in as a kind of place online where you could make a racist comment without actually having to say the thing, because people in that subculture understood.
Right.
Then there's another man that went by the name C.H.U.D the Builder online, whose main content was rage baiting young black men. And he even posted online that the season finale of his show is going to be him shooting a black man. And then, wouldn't you know it, in May, he gets into an altercation in front of a courthouse. He's the only one with a gun. He ends up getting shot, as well as the man that he was provoking. Yeah. And so, chud as a word, I mean, they're really playing it out as the insult, as the chud that we would think of when we're talking about the word itself. But Mike's right to say that in the movie, the chuds are the affected. They're the people.
They're the
us.
afflicted and the affected. Yeah, and the forgotten
and the
not cared about.
And in some ways, it does give you a kind of allegory for thinking about, well, maybe these people are being fed the wrong information. Maybe they are deluded. Maybe like misinformation is the ultimate chemical hazard here.
Yeah.
And we know it's happening because you have, well-known conspiracists like Laura Loomer now taking a step back saying, wait a second, maybe Ukraine was right and I was being silly for pushing Russian talking points. And so you're starting to see that the government information that we get is part and parcel of how we make sense of the world. But also it requires people like the soup kitchen worker played by Daniel Stern and the photojournalist to team up to say, we're going to take on the government and we're going to and we're going to get to the bottom of this. And
And we're not going to accept their gaslighting. I mean, I think that's
Exactly.
one thing that really stands out when you watch the movie in the context of today is like, you know, like the government officials are kind of like, don't be silly, you guys. Come on. There's
Yeah.
nothing like this going on. What are you talking about?
Yeah, and you sound crazy, but if you think about what happened in Flint during the water crisis, they weren't crazy.
Yeah.
They were being poisoned. And so that story carries on day in and day out. The only other thing I would say about that 70s moment of cinema, which is really important, is there was a lot of movies being made about what I would call techno-paranoia.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and so the secret recordings by government,
Yeah.
and then you have Watergate happen.
Yes. But yeah, movies like, you know, The Conversation.
The Conversation is the one I was thinking of,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
is an incredible Gene Hackman
Clute,
film. Clute,
you know, all of
another
those
one.
like paranoid 70s
Parallax
movies.
View.
Yep.
What's that, Mike?
The Parallax View being
The
another.
Parallax
about
View
a
is another one, yeah.
journalist,
Yeah.
being set up as a patsy.
Yeah, so I suggest that people just buckle in this week and watch great 70s horror movies and cinema, and then check out C.H.U.D, and then come to the Cut next Friday and be weird with us.
Let's hear again from C.H.U.D screenwriter Shep Abbott. Here he is reflecting on the cultural impact of the film. We sort of talked about the lives it has led, and how the discourse has sort of strayed from the original intention, which he had to really get people thinking and talking about nuclear waste. Here he is.
One of the things that concerns me a little bit about the meme is it's kind of a joke. In 1977, 78, we were already very anti-nuclear. 3 Mile Island happened in 79. The building of plants, the spread of missiles. And so C.H.U.D wanted to piggyback on that concern.
Yeah. So I mean, he hits on something there, though, which I think is one of the things that is so difficult in this place that we're at right now. And Joan, you were sort of talking about it. Sort of anything. He says it's kind of a joke, quote unquote, kind of a joke. Everything is, quote unquote, kind of a joke. That I feel like is what makes the world of the internet really hard to navigate. As you point out, you have this thing which is an insult, but then the right saying, well, if you're going to insult us, we're going to take it and be proud of it. And that's kind of a joke of a joke of a joke.
Yes.
And you get lost in it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think like, you know, you had this whole like moment with Dark Brandon, you know, so that was the rejoinder to them using Let's Go Brandon as a meme, which actually meant expletive Joe Biden in the underworld. But they then, you know, the left started calling Biden Dark Brandon. And like, you know, so the meme wars have their own kind of momentum in weird ways. And what I do as a scholar is I just try to archive it. I try to follow the different contours of it, because what's so interesting about language is how powerful it is. You know, a meme or a slogan can stick with you your entire life.
Yeah.
Like C.H.U.D, like Just Do It, like I'm Loving It, right?
Yep.
And so these memes, they hold on to us, and they make us feel really powerful. But also at the same time, they give us access to a subculture that, you know, we're given a wink and a nod to. And for us, like Mike and I think that's to the horror community, and the people that have felt like an affinity with C.H.U.D is like part of their makeup is I would say that my politic isn't necessarily oriented towards the left or the right, but because of movies like C.H.U.D and being part of the punk scene in Gloucester, as a kid, it's oriented towards community and making sure that we look out for people.
Well, speaking of the punk scene in Gloucester and community, let's talk briefly before I let you go about this event. Mike, you're going to be there, right? You're going to be part of a panel discussion as part of this?
I am. I'm looking forward to it.
Nice. And Joan, what's going to happen? What can people expect? This is the 31st, right?
It's the 31st. Come. The Cut has a restaurant, so there'll be pizza and brewskis, whatever you like to have a good night. But we're going to start at 8. We're going to have some great local bands. Cigarette Camp is going to play. They're like a melodic punk band. We've got the Chip Rockers, which is a local two-tone ska band that's going to play. Many of the folks used to play also in Gloucester at a place that Shep used to run called the Art Space. And so one of the important things that we're going to do is we're going to honor Shep at this night and call back to the many years of service that he put in, making sure that young people in Gloucester had a place to go. And what was funny about Shep's legacy here is that, if there were no bands playing at the art space, he would just put on C.H.U.D. And so we've, a lot of us have seen the movie a bunch of times because this was where we went to hang out when we were younger. So we'll do the conversation. Shep will be there live. There'll be artifacts from the movie that Shep's going to bring. We're going to give away some prizes for folks dressed with the best 1984 vibe. So come looking weird and feeling fun. We have Riley that's going to be playing music. And then we're going to close out the night with Gossip Caller, which is an incredible local dark wave, like early 80s vampire style band. So
nice.
It's going to be a wild night, wicked fun. And like more than anything, it helps us celebrate Gloucester, it's an incredible artist community. So if you do want to come up to Gloucester, take the day, go to the beach, enjoy it up there because it's one of Massachusetts' great treasures.
All right, there you go. So C.H.U.D Live multimedia experience happening next Friday at The Cut in Gloucester. thecutlive.com for tickets. We've been speaking with Joan Donovan, founder of the Critical Internet Studies Institute, author of Meme Wars, The Untold Story of the Online Battles Upending Democracy in America, and of course, Curiosity Desk contributor. And also Mike Snoonian, host of the pop culture horror podcast, The Pod and the Pendulum. You can get that wherever you get your podcast. Thank you both for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Also worth noting, Joan, we did have a poll going on the YouTube channel. Should Joan do every interview in the C.H.U.D mask? Absolutely won 76%. 67% to 33%.
Well, you've just witnessed the birth of Professor C.H.U.D. So.
When we return, the Red Sox matched their 80-year-old winning streak yesterday afternoon, and then they dropped the ball by evening. So what's going on in our heads psychologically when we're on a winning streak? And what happens when they end? This is the Curiosity Desk. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Claire Foy, the British actor whose nuanced work has ranged from the ill-fated Anne Boleyn in Wolf Hall to her award-winning portrayal of a young Queen Elizabeth II in The Crown. On the big screen, her work spans contemporary dramas and thrillers, including First Man, Unsane, and Women Talking. She joins us to talk about her latest film, H is for Hawk, adapted from Helen Macdonald's best-selling memoir. That and more in The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Subaru of New England. The all-wheel drive 2026 Subaru Forester is committed to keeping loved ones safe on adventures this summer. Subaru retailer locations at SubaruofNewEngland.com. And the Museum of Science. From live science demonstrations to hands-on exhibits, families can explore the wonders of Earth's evolution and the frontiers of space this summer. Learn more at MOS.org.
You are listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. Medgar B. Herwick III. We're streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Well, it's been a big week for Boston sports fans. The Red Sox just matched a historic 15-game winning streak set a whopping 80 years ago. Here's what it was like when it happened.
Slinging a liner. Great play by Che. He throws and skips it. He got the out. There it is. And this incredible magic carpet ride continues. The Red Sox win their 15th in a row.
Almost as exciting as breaking that 86-year losing streak back in 2004. And speaking of losing, they did promptly lose to the Orioles 5-1 about 4 hours later. But all of our attention being put around this winning streak has been a good reminder for us of how much weight we put into this idea of streaks, both in sports and in other parts of our life. And when I say streak, I'm not talking about running naked across Fenway Park. Streaks when we're going to the gym, keeping up with Duolingo, or we've got a hot hand over at the Encore Casino. So why do streaks mean so much to us on a psychological level? Here to help us with that question is Jackie Silverman, Associate Professor of Marketing at Vanderbilt University, who studies the behavioral science behind streaks. Jackie, welcome to the Curiosity Desk.
Thank you for having me.
So what might have been going on for the Red Sox? What might have changed about their behavior once somewhere along the way somebody went, hey, we're on a winning streak? Does it change how we behave when we realize we're on a streak?
Absolutely. So my research shows that when you realize you're on a streak, whether you're a Sox player with your team winning many in a row, or you yourself are using a language learning app like Duolingo and see you've been learning every day, in any of these positive goal contexts, when you realize you have a streak, keeping that streak alive becomes a goal in and of itself. So not only is there pressure to keep doing something every day, but now there's added pressure to keep the streak alive.
So can that, I mean, it sounds like it could be a double-edged sword. It could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. So when people have streaks, that is a new source of motivation, right? They want to keep doing that behavior again and again to keep their streak going. But as you're kind of alluding to, all good things come to an end. Streaks eventually, unfortunately, end, right? And so when that streak is broken, that's coded as a goal failure. And so it can be especially demotivating and actually leads people to disengage. They're less likely to, maybe try as hard in a game or work as hard to, learn a language going forward.
How do we sort of define where, when I say where a streak sort of ends and begins, and by that I don't mean like when we started on the streak and then when the streak ended, but what is the difference, or how do we work out the difference between being on a streak and just engaging in behavior generally where you're sort of trying to change a habit, for example? So if we think about something like going to the gym, right? I may be saying to myself, hey, I want to try to be healthier. I'm going to go to the gym more often. And maybe you're going you say, I'm going to go every day for 10 days or whatever. There's that idea of you're on a streak where you're hitting the goal every day versus just trying to change your behavior. Do you understand what I'm getting at there? What's the difference between the two, or how do we think of them differently? Is being on a diet the same as going on a streak? And then if you fail in that diet, has your streak been broken? How do we define a streak?
Well, a streak is usually recognized once you hit 3 or more consecutive instances or behavior. So we replicated some past work showing that once you hit 3 in a row, people recognize that as feeling streaky, and that less than 3 doesn't really feel like a streak. But to your point about, when you're trying to establish a habit, often people lean on streaks. I think that's actually a great opportunity to get people more motivated and form those good habits. If you say, okay, not only am I going to go to the gym every day, but I'm going to try to have a streak of going to the gym. Now you have that added motivational benefit, and hopefully you'll keep going day after day.
Got it. So streak potential, a streak is a potential tool in a longer term change of behavior.
Yeah, and I think there's also the opportunity for streaks to be a little bit flexible, right? You could say, I have a streak of exercising every day, but sometimes it's not actually good for you to exercise every day. You get sick or you hurt your leg and you shouldn't go for a run. So maybe you change that definition from running every day to doing some sort of physical activity every day, maybe stretching, or maybe going from running every day to running every week or 3 times a week. So there's some flexibility or malleability in what can count as a streak, which can actually then help continue those positive effects of having a streak being intact.
You're listening to The Curiosity Deck. We're talking with consumer behavior researcher Jackie Silverman all about streaks. Well, how do companies use this to their advantage? As we sort of mentioned, you have something like Duolingo, which has streaks and streak repair features. I think of something like Wordle, which I play, and you can have, they're sort of you're on a streak. And I definitely find myself being I got to get to Wordle today. I'm on a streak. So I guess I see how they use it, but tell us more about why this works and how they use it.
Absolutely. So, my co-author and I kind of approached wanting to study streaks from the perspective of helping people reach their goals. But like you're mentioning, companies might have their own goals, right? They want to not only help you, have a creative outlet and using Wordle or learning a new language like on Duolingo, but also they want to keep you engaged with their app because that's a really important metric for how a lot of these companies are evaluated. So to them, keeping consumers engaged, reducing attrition over time is really important. So kind of along the same lines that a streak can help increase your motivation, working towards a goal, companies might highlight your streaks in a whole variety of domains, in using their app, in logging on every day, what have you, to keep you engaged and keep those numbers up.
You talk about the fact that, when a streak ends, it can be demotivating. So what do we know about that, and how do we kind of manage that? Now I'm again thinking about the Red Sox, whose streak just ended last night, and so it's like you don't want to see them lose 3 out of 4 or whatever. But also in our own lives, obviously, if we're on a streak, we're working to maintain it. And when your streak breaks, how do you mitigate the fallout from that?
Yeah, so we have some evidence that allowing for streak repair can be a really useful way to get people back on track, even after experiencing that broken streak. So we find that, framing the next behavior as filling in that miss in the broken streak gets people back on track, more willing to keep doing the behavior. And like you mentioned, we see this in real life on other platforms. Like you said, Duolingo has streak repair and streak freeze. I believe the app Time Hop, it allows you to see what you posted on social media on this day in previous years. They allow you to watch an ad, and then that fills in your streak of using their app every day. So there's all sorts of creative ways that we as consumers or individuals or companies can, let the broken streak feel a little less like a failure and help you get back on track.
I mean, it seems like we have a pretty good handle on the idea that a streak will motivate us. Do we have any idea why that is? Do we have any idea why it is that doing something for X number of days in a row, or whatever it is, do we know why that is motivating? Do we have any notion?
Yeah, that's, it's a question that we've grappled with in our research. And I think that there are a couple reasons motivating why, keeping a streak going becomes a goal. One is that streaks are a really salient or obvious and attention-grabbing pattern. There's a lot of literature in like the visual kind of attention domain that once you hit 3 in a row, that's seen as a really special pattern. It gains attention, it signals consistency, which can be really a valuable signal in itself. And so people, notice streaks, they get a special name, they signal valuable consistency. And so altogether, that leads streaks to then be something inherently valuable. And then you add on top of it the fact that people around us are talking about streaks. We've been talking about streaks in sports for decades, talking about streaks on apps for, at least a decade, if not more. And so this continual social focus on streaks gives it even more value and something that's worth talking about and achieving.
How did you get interested in streaks? You've done multiple studies on streaks. Like, how does one end up being like, I'm gonna research streaks?
Yeah, it's not necessarily the path I predicted, but back in grad school, I was getting some drinks at a brewery with my co-author, Alex. And we noticed that my husband, he really liked beer at the time, and he would usually log the beers he drank, and he wasn't logging these new beers we were having at this brewery. So we're like, why aren't you taking out your phone and logging them? And he said, well, I forgot to do it last weekend when we were drinking, so it just doesn't feel very useful to log it now. And Alex and I looked at each other. He broke his, exactly. And so Alex and I looked at each other and we're like, well, that's interesting. We should talk about this when we're not drinking. So the next day in the office, we're brainstorming, well, why did, my husband do that? And we kind of got around to the idea that, logging your behavior, seeing a complete record, seeing a streak, that those are really valuable cues to people. And so we kind of built from there. And now we have this whole line of research looking at how streaks can be motivating and helpful.
It's amazing. See, breakthroughs can happen anywhere, including at the brewery. We have been speaking with Jackie Silverman, Associate Professor of Marketing at Vanderbilt University, who studies consumer behavior, all about streaks. Jackie, thanks so much for spending some time with us today.
Anytime. Thanks.
when we return. Thank you to everybody out there who's been sending us some really excellent listener questions at the Curiosity Desk landing page. With the time we've got left today, we're going to try to answer as many of those recent questions as we possibly can, including, are all itches equal? This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. Stay with us.
Next time on In Common, rowers are sprinting to the beach. A preview of a new Olympic event on the Massachusetts coast. And CAI brings back a groundbreaking reporting project from 20 years ago.
I was about 30 when I moved to Cape Cod in 2005 and started gathering the voices and stories that would haunt me for a lifetime.
All that and more on In Common. Listen Saturday at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Commonwealth Shakespeare Company, presenting A Midsummer Night's Dream. This summer's free Shakespeare on the Boston Common. Shakespeare's classic comedy is transported to a neon-lit festival escape, July 22nd through August 9th. comshakes.org. And Heights Crossing, an assisted living and memory support community offering residents experiences aimed at promoting independence, inspiring curiosity, and encouraging connection with others. More at heightscrossing.com.
You are listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We're streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. We are back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow, so think about heading down and joining us there if you can. All right, now is part of the show, one of my favorite when we get here. We are venturing to answer some of your recent curiosity questions. Tons of you have been filling out that question form on the Curiosity Desk landing page. Thank you for that. It is now our turn to try to bring you some resolution. We've done our homework, we've talked to the experts, and we have some answers, or at least as close to answers as we could get for some of these. Just as a reminder, if you have something you are curious about, you can always go to gbhnews.org, go under the shows tab, click Curiosity Desk, find your way to the question form. It could not be easier. Well, it could be easier, but that is the way we have for you to do it. All right, with me now in studio, as promised, with some answers, is Rachel Armany, producer here at the Curiosity Desk. Rachel, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm at your service.
All right, so we have a few questions that have come in that you have spent hours upon hours toiling over to find answers. So let's kick things off with our first question.
Hi, this is Bill Tuttle of West Roxbury. My curiosity question is simply this. What exactly is an itch? Physiologically speaking, what causes the sensation of itching? Why do our bodies itch? Does it serve any physiological purpose? And are there different kinds of itches? Thank you.
Yes, I love Bill in West Roxbury. This is such a good question.
I love this question, and I love that he asked like 5 questions
like
in one.
Yes. Different kinds of itch. All right, let's take it on.
Lots of curiosity here. We love to see it. So for this one, I had to find like the supreme itch expert.
And where are they?
So it was somebody in Wisconsin. Her name is Taylor Sheehan. She's a neuroscientist and an assistant professor at the Medical College of Wisconsin. And she also runs a research lab that studies how and why we itch. So she was kind of the perfect person for this. So this is what she had to say.
Itch is a type of protective alarm system for our body. So it alerts us that there's something harmful on our skin and then motivates us to scratch it away or brush it away. And I like to think of itch as like a cousin to the sensation of pain, which maybe folks are more familiar with. And both itch and pain serve to protect us from harm.
Yeah, so I thought this was a super interesting answer. Something that she said that was also special about itch, as opposed to pain, is that it's like yawning. So it's socially contagious, which means that...
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
like if I see you scratching an itch, then I'm going to be like, I'm kind of itchy.
Exactly. She even said that when she presents talks at like a conference about itch, she notices people in the audience start to get kind of fidgety and itchy. And she always, gets a kick out of that. And basically she was saying that one of the theories for why that happens is it's a way that we have evolved to protect large groups of, species.
Yeah. When you said it, it started to make sense to me because you sort of think about the idea of something in the air that might be causing an itch. It would make sense if you're near somebody and you see them itching, just to be protected, you would do the same.
Like you notice, you see the writing on the walls, you're like, oh, I better start itching too. And so Bill obviously had a bunch of other questions. So are there different kinds of itches?
Good. So that's what I was going to ask.
Yes.
Let's go.
So she said there are 2 different kinds, chemical and mechanical, and they kind of make sense with what the names are. So chemical is something like a mosquito bite. So when a mosquito bites you, the mosquito saliva has like chemicals in it that will trigger an immune response. So that would also be something like poison ivy, you start to get itchy. Mechanical is when something is like physically on your skin. So like if a bug flies on you and you flick it off, or sometimes she was saying even with clothing, it can be kind of irritating. Your body's trying to like protect you. It's trying to protect your skin. And then something else that she said was just kind of interesting about it. Like she had kind of a question that she gets, which is, should I scratch an itch?
Right.
I feel like it's the age-old question.
Totally.
And she was saying that, it's obviously very tempting because it's providing this immediate relief and it like is blocking. So she said like, we know what's going on in the brain with itch. When you scratch, it's blocking the signal from going to your brain. So it's kind of like stopping
It's taking it away.
Exactly. But she was saying that it also has negative impacts on your skin. So if you have like a wound, it's not going to heal as quickly if you itch it. So she says she recommends cooling an itch instead of scratching it.
So like what like a little bit of ice or like a wet rag or something
like a wet ice pack, aloe, something like that. I mean, I know they also make like things that kind of look like chapstick for a mosquito bite. You can kind of like just, like an ointment, something like that.
All right, good. You got that soup to nuts, top to bottom, everything you ever wanted to know and
Detailed
things you didn't even know you wanted to know about itching. All right, move on to question number 2, which came our way from Mary in Framingham. Mary asked, why in a bag of mixed lettuces do the red leaves always deteriorate faster than the green leaves?
Yeah, I love this one too.
Question A for me is she right? Is that true?
So it's not always true. It really it's a very complicated answer to this one. So it really depends on the exact composition of each bag. However, in my personal experience, I have experiences.
All right. So you saw this question from Mary and you were like, I feel you, Mary.
I was like, that's my girl right there. Yeah. I do feel like the red lettuce does go bad faster. It's not a conspiracy theory. It does happen. So for this
is there
one,
a reason?
There is a reason.
Okay.
So I spoke with Yosef Alshof. He's a senior research associate at Cornell, and he works in post-harvest science. So here's what he had to say.
And when you have different cultivars, green and red, they have different thickness of leaves first. They have different thickness in wax. The wax in the cuticle part of the skin of the leaf of the lettuce. And this makes the difference in the deterioration and also the impact of the shelf life.
Mm-hmm. So as he mentioned, there are a few different factors. He said it's, kind of a complicated answer. So the pigment that makes lettuce red versus green, the red one is called anthocyanin. And he was saying that the way that we get red lettuce can happen under certain conditions. So sometimes it can happen from stress when the plant is stressed by, being super hot and cold, or if there's drought or changes in light, it can kind of create more pigment.
So
it's like kind of stressed out.
Yeah, that's going to deteriorate faster.
Yes. So it's like the condition of the lettuce is also kind of stressed out. But also he said the tissue of the red lettuce can be high in phenolics, which is, compared to the green lettuce, which can also cause browning and deterioration. Also, so inside packaging, because it's like these airtight containers, either like, you've seen like those boxes of lettuce that come, or a bag of lettuce. It can have respiration on the inside, which is when the lettuce is consuming all the oxygen in the bag or the box and producing CO2. So some species, because the red and green are basically kind of like different varieties of lettuce, and the red can be more susceptible to that process versus the green.
I see.
So one thing he said for that is, if it is susceptible to respiration, if you put and this is also like a hack that I love too, putting a paper towel inside the packaging so that it absorbs like water, it doesn't condensate, just kind of like, preserves it a little bit better. So yeah, that's a long-winded answer to explain that it is true. And it's because they're very different, species wise.
All right. Yeah. Let's go on to question number 3 then. This is Paulina in Boston who asks, why is it that New Englanders are obsessed with ice-cold drinks all year round, no matter how cold it is outside? This one is definitely true. When did it start, and who was the first person that introduced it? So what's going on? Why do we drink so much ice?
I also want to note that the last time I was here, we were talking about ice drinks as well.
I was just thinking the same thing, Rachel.
This is my beat now. I just always talk about ice drinks. So first I wanted to say that Callie Crossley at Under the Radar actually did a whole segment on this. So obviously I'm going to have my little spiel, but you should definitely check that full segment out too.
Podcast version available wherever you get your podcasts. That's Callie Crossley and Under the Radar.
Yes, she's great. So for this one, we spoke with Andrew Robichaux, who is a professor of history at Boston University. He's actually in the process of publishing his new book, Frozen Over, Making Ice and Knowing Nature in 19th Century America. So he couldn't say an exact reason for why we are obsessed with iced coffee, but he provided a convincing theory.
It could have something to do with the fact that Boston was the center of ice production and ice trade in the 1800s. So beginning in the very early 1800s, starting in 1806, a merchant named Frederick Tudor shipped ice from Boston to Martinique. And that was what most historians see as the beginning of an American ice trade.
So this is
the
something
old
that
ice barons, the
and
old
their chagrin.
Boston area ice barons.
Exactly. So this is kind of what we talked about, a week or two ago, about how Boston is kind of this hub for ice. So Tudor, who he mentioned in the cut, was actually the first person who shipped blocks of ice to warmer climates. He mentioned Martinique. His first trip in 1806 actually did not go so well. All the ice melted when he got there.
Yikes.
Yep. So because there also wasn't a great storage mechanism for it, there were no ice houses, which at the time were like refrigerators to keep food and beverages cold. So at a certain point in time, ice was kind of this thing that only wealthy people or people in cold climates could access. So by kind of getting into this, it was, a real money maker by being able to give more people ice. So he did figure it out. He shipped ice from Massachusetts to the Caribbean, and he did this by packing it with sawdust.
Yep.
So ice was cut from some ponds that our listeners might be familiar with, like Walden Pond.
Heard of it.
Exactly. So yeah, that's how Boston kind of became this epicenter of ice shipping. And people at the time had like an ice dealer or an ice man to be able to get their ice. That was not like an uncommon thing. So obviously once we had refrigeration and we were able to kind of keep our own ice more easily, that kind of wasn't as important. His advancements weren't as important, but his estate was about equivalent to $200 million in today's dollars.
Yeah, one of my favorite ice baron stories is Wenham Lake Ice, which was one of these lakes where they would cut ice. They sort of got into the market in London, and Wenham Lake Ice was what Buckingham Palace used for their ice back in the day. And also apparently, apparently the deal with this particular ice was incredibly clear.
Oh yes.
And so they used to have this. Apparently, they had this shop in downtown London, and what they would do is they'd put these huge blocks of ice in the display window, and then they would put the newspaper behind the block of ice, and you could read the newspaper through this enormous block of ice. That's how clear it was. That was like their way of being like, Wenham Lake Ice, the best ice you can get in London. So
what a flex.
So Robichaux's theory is that basically because we were such early adopters of the ice industry, that maybe that strain holds on today and why we are so obsessed. But all right, I'll buy it.
We're loyal to our heritage.
That's fair enough. All right, we got one final question, and this is from a friend of the show. Let's hear that question.
Hey, this is Jim from Cambridge, and my question is, why are eggs bought and sold in multiples of 12?
There it is. Jim Browdy, we're finally getting to your question.
Yep, Jim has repeatedly requested this answer. So no worries, Jim. I did find the answer for you. So for this one, we spoke with Annie Gray. She's a food historian specializing in British food and dining from the 1600s onwards. And so she basically said that eggs are sold by the dozen because in the past you could count to 12 using just your fingers, which obviously you still can do.
Wait a minute. It was that back when we had 6 fingers on each hand?
No.
What are you talking about?
Let me explain.
Okay.
So you hold up your 4 fingers and this is great visual for the audience. Obviously, if you're driving, keep your hands on the wheel. But if you hold up your 4 fingers, you have the lines separating your finger.
So
you have 3 little
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I see. So the segments on your fingers. There's 12 segments.
So you can be like
on
1,
fingers.
2, 3, 4, like hold it up, and it like counts each 3. 1. She was also saying that 12 at the time was a very popular number for lots of things in the 18th century, not just for eggs. So this is what she had to say about that.
You find in the past 12 is used for a lot of things. It's a very logical number to use. Today we would think of 10 as being much more logical because certainly in the UK, less so I admit in the States, we're much more used to the metric system. So 5, 10, it's a really, really good way to measure. But in the past, in Britain and in America and in lots of other places that were influenced by British culture, 12 was the number. So 12 inches in a foot. You get, I mean, there are 12 months in the year, there are 12 signs of the zodiac that go with it. 12 was this kind of not quite magic number, but certainly one that was used a lot.
Mm-hmm. And, 12 apostles, 12 tribes of Israel.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Also religious number as well. She also added like a personal anecdote that she said with eggs, when you start making custard, 6 egg yolks is like the perfect amount to set a UK pint of milk. So yeah, 12 was just kind of this big number at the time. I also did a little bit of debunking when I was looking into this one, because if you Google this question,
dangerous.
The
That's why we're here.
The autofilter. Yeah. So when you Google this question, there was like this theory that the reason why it was 12 because it was 12 shillings to the pound, so it would be easy to just like give a pound and get 12 eggs. But she was saying that in her research, that seems like a more Anglo-centric point of view, because there were other countries that didn't use the shilling or the pound that also sold in 12. So it's kind of like, instead of 12 shillings in a pound was because 12 was the magic number, not like the other way around. But for us personally, the reason why we use it is 100% because of British culture. It's just like inherited from our friends across the pond.
All right. That is Curiosity Desk producer Rachel Armany answering your questions. As a reminder, we want to hear from you. If you got a curiosity question, send it our way. You can go to our website, gbhnews.org. Hit the show's pages, hit the Curiosity Desk. We got a handy-dandy form there. Or you can email us at curiositydesk@wgbh.org. Rachel, thanks again.
You're welcome. Anytime.
And that about does it for us. For now, the Curiosity Desk is produced by Aidan Connolly, Rachel Armany, Olivia Corcio, and Hannah Loss. Our intern is Mukta Dharmapurkar. We always question Patty Daniels and Jamie Bologna's answers here. Our engineer today, John McClaw Parker. Special thanks to Andrew Massawa and Maddie Geyer. Stay with us. In just about 2 minutes, The Culture Show is coming your way. You can hear Jared's conversation with actress Claire Foy. You might know her as Queen Elizabeth in the first couple seasons of The Crown. They talk about her latest film, H is for Hawk, which is adapted from the incredible Helen Macdonald memoir. We will be right back here in 23 short hours on GBH 89.7 and streaming on YouTube. If you can't wait that long, well, we've got the podcast version of the show. You can check that out anytime, anywhere that it is you get your podcasts. Just a reminder, we're always looking for your questions, so head over to the website and tell us what you are curious about. All right, until next time, I am Edgar B. Herwick III, and I hope you will stay curious out there.